Chapter 1745. Rolling immortal divine flames burned on Tianyang's body. It even swept up streams of demonic energy and directly shattered the entire city lord's mansion. At the same time, a demonic aura erupted in all directions with Tianyang as the center. However, in the middle of the demonic energy, there was an immortal divine flame burning. It looked extremely strange. This is... Seeing this, Qian Zhongyuan's expression changed drastically as he looked at the pitch-black flames in front of him in disbelief. Immortal divine flame. How could you have the immortal divine flame? Qian Zhongyuan said in disbelief. As a member of the immortal emperor court, he could naturally tell at a glance that this was definitely the purest immortal divine flame. However, Su Tianshao was clearly just a small demonic cultivator in the barren land. How could he have the immortal divine flame? As for the immortal divine flame fire seed that was auctioned earlier, Qian Zhongyuan only thought about it for a moment before rejecting it. If it was a fire seed, no matter what, it would not be able to achieve such power. Look directly at me, Tianyang said coldly. Hearing this, Qian Zhongyuan subconsciously raised his head and looked at Tianyang. The moment he saw Tianyang's face, his heart skipped a beat, and he was so shocked that his liver and gallbladder were torn apart. Immortal! Immortal Emperor? Hearing this, Tianyang snorted coldly again. Are you sure? Tianyang's current appearance was based on the immortal emperor's divine power avatar. However, Tianyang had made a lot of adjustments in the details, causing him to look almost identical to the immortal emperor at first glance. However, upon closer inspection, there were many differences. Thank you for the free information. If it were not for him, Tianyang would not have known that the immortal emperor had all kinds of relatives for him to impersonate. He would have killed Qian Zhongyuan the moment he started talking nonsense. Not the immortal emperor? Hearing this, Qian Zhongyuan was stunned. Then, he reacted. This face did indeed look very similar to the immortal emperor. However, there were still many differences. Could it be the undying prince's relative? Qian Zhongyuan said respectfully. In an instant, he changed from his previous arrogant and insufferably arrogant attitude to his current attitude of speaking with his head lowered. As the number one genius of the divine world, the undying prince's position in the undying emperor palace was incomparably high. As his relative, his status naturally wasn't something that an ordinary late-stage god realm cultivator like him could compare to. Tianyang just snorted, neither admitting nor denying it. However, this light snort was enough to make Qian Zhongyuan think of many things. Then, I wonder what your excellency has come to this little barren land for? Qian Zhongyuan said respectfully. Hearing this, Tianyang said lightly. Because I heard that the fire seed of the undying divine flame was being auctioned here, and I happened to be training nearby, so I hurried over to see who was so presumptuous to actually dare to auction the fire seed of my undying bloodline. However, I couldn't find it, so I went to the martial arts arena you set up to play. Now that I've met you, you're trying to intimidate me, Tianyang said coldly. He had imitated the undying prince's temperament of looking down on everyone. Hearing this, Qian Zhongyuan instantly trembled. It was very reasonable for him to rush over for the fire seed of the undying divine flame, and Qian Zhongyuan didn't suspect anything. Or rather, Qian Zhongyuan didn't dare to suspect anything from the beginning. Now, because of Tianyang's words, he was completely terrified. The person in front of him was the relative of the undying prince. Previously, he said that this person was using a treasure to cheat, and he even wanted to kill him? In the undying emperor palace, it was a sin that could cause one's soul to be destroyed. Instantly, Qian Zhongyuan trembled to the extreme. He lowered his head, not daring to look at Tianyang. He was afraid that the other party would kill him in a fit of anger. If the relative of the undying prince wanted to kill a mere late-stage god realm cultivator like him, he didn't even need to inform the elders of the undying emperor palace. In Yingtian City, He could kill him at will. And he couldn't resist at all. Otherwise, he would be regarded as a traitor. Becoming a traitor was a crime that was countless times crueler than death. Seeing that you still have some strength, I won't kill you, Tianyang said indifferently. After all, this guy didn't seem to have seen any relatives other than the undying prince. He wasn't afraid of being exposed if he pretended to be one. However, Tianyang was going to the Undying Emperor Palace, and he would definitely be investigated by the Undying Emperor Palace. At that time, his disguise would most likely be useless. He still needed Qian Zhongyuan to cover for him. After arriving at the Undying Emperor Palace, Tianyang would be able to do whatever he wanted. Thank you for your mercy, sir. Qian Zhongyuan seemed to be in disbelief. He actually escaped from a calamity just like that? However, Tianyang's next sentence made him come back to his senses. However, I will be returning to the Undying Emperor Palace tomorrow. You shouldn't stay in this barren land. Follow me back to the Undying Emperor Palace, Tianyang said indifferently. Qian Zhongyuan smiled bitterly. As expected, the hierarchy in the Undying Emperor Palace was extremely strict. It wasn't something a late god realm expert like him could shake. Right now, he could only struggle at death's door for a little longer. Of course, Qian Zhongyuan didn't despair. After all, since Tianyang didn't kill him on the spot, it meant that Tianyang wasn't extremely angry. As long as he could return to the Undying Emperor Palace, he would have lived half of his life. Right now, the most important thing was to curry favor with the Undying Emperor Palace's relative. Sir, the Emperor Palace is very far away from here. There might be various dangerous people there. If you go back alone, not only will it take a lot of time, it will also be dangerous. Why don't you let me bring you back? I have a special flying artifact here. We can quickly return to the Undying Emperor Palace, Qian Zhongyuan said respectfully. Hearing this, Tianyang's expression didn't change. He nodded slightly. Then, let's do as you say. You should know that I'm not asking you to come back with me to accept your death. After that, Tianyang withdrew the demonic qi and undying god flames around him and left with a flick of his sleeve. Qian Zhongyuan, who was in the city lord's manor, heaved a sigh of relief as if he had been pardoned. That person is, right now, even the city lord of Yingtian City didn't dare to casually call Tianyang. He could only refer to him as that person. You can't ask. Qian Zhongyuan's expression turned cold. That person's status is extremely high. He's not someone you can afford to offend. I'll return tomorrow. You can hold the remaining battles on your own. After that, Qian Zhongyuan disappeared in a flash. End of chapter. Chapter 1746. From the very beginning, Heavenly Sun did not plan to sneak into the immortal Emperor's court as Yi Chen envisioned. He was different from Yi Chen, who only wanted to cause as much damage as possible, so he needed to stay in the immortal empire for a long time. This time, Tianyang only had one goal: to kill the immortal emperor. Then, he would leave with one strike and continue to cultivate elsewhere. Tianyang did not think that his current cultivation base, which could barely be considered an ordinary emperor, could compete with a colossus like the immortal empire that had existed since ancient times. Even if Goddess Xue broke through to the divine venerable stage that she dreamed of, she might not be able to do it. Sneak in safely, and then spend a few decades to assassinate them? Tianyang would not do such a rookie act. If he wanted to kill, he would do it in an instant. Therefore, from the very beginning, Tianyang did not plan to keep a low profile. After Yi Chen told him this information that might not be important to him, Tianyang decided on this plan. He would suppress Qian Zhongyuan and head to the immortal empire with a higher status than Qian Zhongyuan. Tianyang was still thinking about the plan after that. However, the first half of the plan was executed perfectly. You're leaving tomorrow? Hearing this, Lan Xinran's eyes widened in disbelief. So soon? I thought I would have to finish all the martial arts arenas. Lan Xinran sighed and said, Although they had not been together for long, she already had a good impression of this powerful and good-natured demonic cultivator that she met outside Ingtian City. Now that she heard that Tianyang was leaving, she was naturally extremely disappointed. There's no banquet in the world that doesn't end. Let it go. Looking at the girl in front of him, who had a disappointed expression on her face, Tianyang immediately smiled and said, "However, I have something for you." Tianyang chuckled and took out a ball of light that was sealed by divine power from his space bag. "This ball of light is easy to open, but you can open it after I leave the day after tomorrow." Tianyang smiled. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared from the Lan family. However, Lan Shinran had a strange expression on her face as she held the ball of light. "This is a token of love? Hey, your wife is using your first-person perspective to see you flirt with a girl. How can you be so brazen?" As expected, the moment Tianyang returned to his room, the voice of the demonized vast expanse Holy Spirit rang out. "It's just a gift. I've disturbed her a lot these few days. If it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't contact the Undying Emperor dynasty," said Lin Fan. Tianyang, on the other hand, was baffled. Then, he noticed Ling Yuhan's dissatisfaction in the Vientiane Sky Market and smiled. "I just had too many spoils of war and didn't know where to send them." This was taken from the space bag of the black-clothed old man from the archaic Jiang family. "Take whatever you want. What's mine is yours," Tianyang said with a smile. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan, who was still throwing a tantrum just now, immediately turned red. No. It's all Xiao Hei's fault." Then, she ran into the Heaven Tower, not even daring to look at Tianyang. "Didn't you say that I'm the invincible demonized vast expanse Holy Spirit? Why are you calling me Xiao Hei again?" Hearing the two words Xiao Hei, the demonized vast expanse Holy Spirit was enraged. However, Tianyang did not have the time to care about the few people in the chaotic small world. Instead, he snapped back to reality. "How did you do it?" Looking at Tianyang's smiling face, Yi Chen had an indescribable feeling. Although Yi Chen had been paying attention to Tianyang since a few years ago when the Undying Emperor dynasty first put Tianyang on the wanted list. Although he did not receive any news after leaving the Southern Hundred Territories, Yi Chen still had his own judgment of Tianyang's strength based on what he had heard recently. He was at the peak of Celestial Stage. It was impossible for him to be at the peak of Celestial Stage. After all, no matter how strong one's talent was, it was impossible to cross such a huge gap to fight against the enemy. However, since they met, he had spent billions of Reiki, killed more than 100 prodigies in one move, and confronted the people of the Undying Emperor dynasty head-on. No matter how he looked at it, it did not seem like something a peak beginner god stage could do. Look, Tianyang did not intend to explain anything to Yi Chen, who was still a little wary of him. Instead, he chuckled. "Now you have two choices. One is to go to the Undying Emperor dynasty as a genius I found in the barren land. The other is not to come with me and continue to wait for a good opportunity. This time, I don't plan to stay for too long. If you go with me, you won't stay for too long either. Otherwise, you'll be killed." Tianyang smiled, talking about life and death as if it was an ordinary conversation. "You don't plan to stay for too long? Then what are you going to do? Steal secrets? Secrets? Something like that." Only then did Tianyang remember that he had another mission in the Undying Emperor's palace other than killing the Undying Prince. It was to find the complete inheritance of the Tian clan in the Undying Emperor dynasty through the last clue left behind by Emperor Tsangwu before he died. However, it was almost impossible for Tianyang to achieve the latter before he had enough status. Tianyang didn't have much hope for it either. If that's the case, it's not impossible. If you want to leave, let me know in advance. Yi Chen pondered for a while and muttered to himself. He was just a mid-stage god stage cultivator. Even if he entered the headquarters of the Undying Emperor dynasty, He could only wait for an opportunity. If Tianyang succeeded in stealing the secrets, then he would be much stronger than him. Hurting the undying emperor dynasty was revenge. In order to take revenge, Yi Chen was basically fearless. Then, okay. Tianyang smiled. Then, his face changed, and he disguised himself as a relative of the undying prince. As for Yi Chen, he followed beside Tianyang. The next day, outside Yingtian City, a huge dragon slowly circled and finally landed. Qian Zhongyuan came in front of Tianyang respectfully and said, "This is the relic I refine. This is the relic that I've tamed. It was originally a shuttle, but I've refined a true dragon's spirit into it. Now, it won't even take a month to travel from the barren land to the imperial court." Okay. Tianyang nodded and then stepped on the dragon. The dragon sensed that someone had boarded it and immediately roared. However, Tianyang's eyes narrowed and released a pressure. The unruly dragon instantly became obedient. Seeing this, Qian Zhongyuan's pupils shrank. He was very clear about the character of his treasured artifact. This person actually suppressed it in an instant? Then, Qian Zhongyuan quickly adjusted his expression and smiled respectfully. Then, next we will go to the imperial court. End of chapter. Chapter 1747. Divine World, North, Imperial Court. The ruler of the 1,000 territories in the north, recognized by countless forces in the divine world. The undying imperial court was located here. Emperor's Highness, you broke through again? In the undying imperial court, in the highest level cultivation secret realm. This was a secret realm created by the undying imperial court for the undying Emperor's Highness. Spiritual mountain, immortal platform, heavenly lake, immortal mist. Originally, this place was one of the few ancient ruins of the undying imperial court. Now, for the undying Emperor's Highness, the undying Emperor's Highness, it was transformed into a secret realm. It's not considered a breakthrough. A calm voice appeared, as a handsome young man with an extraordinary aura rose from the heavenly lake. The surrounding heaven and earth spirit chi surged and turned into a spirit chi storm that swept across the entire secret realm. I'm still a step away from the Imperial Emperor realm. It seems like cultivating in seclusion won't be able to take that step, said the immortal prince indifferently. Then, he waved his right hand and the storm of spiritual chi that had been created because of him standing up calmed down. He's about to reach the Imperial Emperor realm? The servant beside him widened his eyes in disbelief. Emperor's Highness, you're only 300 years old this year, right? If I count the spiritual embryo, I'm 378 years old. The undying emperor waved his hand, and a long robe appeared on his body. Before he was born, he was blessed by the heavens and earth, and he started cultivating when he was still in the spiritual embryo realm. When he was born, he was already in the origin transformation realm. Within a year, he broke through the Tao fire realm, spiritual sea realm, and connecting heaven realm. When he was 12 years old, he was already at the peak of the connecting heaven realm. In order to prevent his foundation from being unstable, he sealed himself for 50 years. After breaking the seal, he awakened the undying bloodline, the 9 dragons' 9 marks divine bloodline. After that, he cultivated like a hot knife through butter. When he was 100 years old, he stepped into the divine realm. However, because he didn't fight to the death, the divine bloodline couldn't give the undying emperor's divine bloodline to him directly. Thus, he fixed his cultivation and went to the dangerous places in the divine world to train. Today, he was only one battle away from becoming an imperial emperor. Inside, he was the strongest genius of the undying imperial court in millions of years. In the outside world, they were supreme geniuses who had suppressed the ancient times. Then what about Tianyang, whom I personally put a bounty on? How is he now? Said the immortal prince indifferently. His eyes were filled with a sharp light. In his 300 years of cultivation, Tianyang was the first person he had dealt with more than twice without success. The undying prince had a premonition that Tianyang might be his opportunity to break through to the imperial emperor realm. I don't know. After the secret treasure of Emperor Qing in the southern Hundred Territories, he went to Haomen. As for where he went after that, I don't know. The attendant at the side shook his head and said. At the same time, he did not dare to look at the undying prince. As he cultivated his godly pulse and godly body, the undying prince's appearance became more and more handsome. He did not look like a human at all. Even the male servants did not dare to look at the undying prince. Don't know. Hearing this, the undying prince's expression changed slightly, and he calmly asked, Are you sure? Although the undying imperial court's intelligence network was not as big as Wentianji's, in a small place like the south-central Hundred Territories, it was not much weaker than Wentianji's. But now the undying imperial court did not know? However, after Tianyang's whereabouts were lost, the snow god's lineage in the snow heavenly realm of the Hundred Territories of the south-central experienced a great change. The snow god, who was at the peak of the emperor realm, was seriously injured and fell into a deep sleep. The entire snow god's lineage was divided between the immemorial Jiang family and the Dragon Hall. Now, because of the territory left behind by the snow god's lineage, there are still many conflicts. After thinking for a while, the attendant decided to tell the truth about his conjecture. However, no matter how strong the undying imperial court's intelligence network was, the south-central Hundred Territories was still the territory of the immemorial Jiang family and the Dragon Palace. Their guess about Tianyang's whereabouts was of utmost importance. They would not easily leak it out. Of course, if they analyzed the recent changes in Jiang Xian's position, they might be able to find some clues. However, the undying imperial court was a transcendent power. Why would they care about a power struggle between imperial emperors? You mean to say that the heavenly sun has something to do with the fact that the peak sovereign emperor is seriously injured and in a deep slumber, and such a huge force being divided by the other two forces? Asked the undying prince indifferently. The attendant hastily shook his head and said in fear and trepidation, No, no. Even though the undying prince didn't sound like he was questioning Li Qie, his words clearly expressed his attitude towards Li Qie. Tianyang just broke through to the God realm recently. He won't be able to break through again in a short period of time. According to the information we received, his strongest battle record was defeating a late God realm expert. He's already on par with me, said the undying prince indifferently. However, even if his talent is on par with mine, he's only a few decades old. A few decades is enough to widen the gap, and it'll only get bigger. Moreover, he's just someone with the same bloodline density as the undying imperial court, said the undying prince before disappearing into the heavenly lake. There were many things he needed to do other than cultivating. However, it did not affect him at all. The 9 dragons' 9 runes, supreme divine veins, the immortal divine body, and the highest concentration of the immortal bloodline in millions of years. The immortal prince was destined to inherit the immortal imperial family's legacy and become a supreme god. Therefore, he needed to take control of the undying imperial court in advance. His words were extremely calm from the beginning to the end. There was no praise or criticism, he was just stating a fact. A fact that he was stronger than Tianyang. Yes. The attendant nodded, but did not follow him. His accusation was merely to serve the undying prince in the cultivation mystic realm. Just as the undying prince finished cultivating and was discussing Tianyang. As the topic of discussion, Tianyang sat on Qian Zhongyuan's Jiao dragon and arrived at the imperial court realm. It was known as the Eternal Divine Court, a force that spanned over 300 million miles, spanning from the heavens to the Yellow Springs. It had presided over the God realm since ancient times, and was known as the Eternal Court. This was the Imperial Court realm of the Undying Imperial Court. Lord, do you want to take a look around the Imperial Court realm, or return to the Imperial Court directly? Qian Zhongyuan said respectfully. Tianyang chuckled when he finished looking at the Imperial Court realm. Let's go to the Undying Imperial Court. End of chapter. Chapter 1748. The Undead Imperial Court wasn't located in a small world. Instead, it was located in the God realm. Unlike the Snow God's bloodline, the Undying Emperor Court was truly located in the divine world. Tianyang didn't sense any world ripples with his world energy. In other words, the possibility of suddenly turning the surrounding world into one's own world while fighting did not exist. When Tianyang fought the Snow Goddess, he had to use a large amount of world energy to break out of the Snow Goddess world because he was trapped in the Snow Goddess world. However, due to the huge consumption of world energy, he didn't succeed in killing the Snow Goddess with the ultimate venerable stage Ice Law. Otherwise, Emperor Tsangwu wouldn't have to make a move. This time, Tianyang was on guard against this. It's been a long time and it's changed again. There weren't any cities around the Undead Imperial Court. Or rather, the Undead Imperial Court itself was a huge city with a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. At the center was the headquarters of the Undead Imperial Court. Tianyang only used his astral body to sense roughly, and he could feel that there were more than 100 divine stage auras hidden in the center of the Undead Imperial Court. Even the auras of sovereign emperors could be vaguely sensed, at least 3 of them. There was also an extremely terrifying aura hidden in the depths. Tianyang wasn't even sure if that person existed. No wonder the Snow Goddess didn't dare to fight the Undead Imperial Court even if she successfully broke through to the divine venerable stage. Return to the Imperial Court first? Hearing this, Qian Zhongyuan's face turned pale. Looking at Qian Zhongyuan's expression, Tianyang immediately understood what he was thinking. I'm not going back to punish you, Tianyang said calmly. With your identity, do you need me to go back? On the side, the corner of Yi Chen's mouth twitched. How could Tianyang be so confident in his disguise? Wasn't he afraid that this late-stage God realm Undying Emperor Palace would see through his disguise and kill him? This was no longer Ingtian City, but the Imperial Court realm. Yes. Hearing this, Qian Zhongyuan's expression changed slightly as he replied respectfully. Your flood dragon is not bad. Its speed is not bad. Therefore, I'll let bygones be bygones, Tianyang said. At the same time, he flipped through the map of the Undead Imperial Court that he had obtained when he obtained Emperor Tsangwu's essence blood. This map was already from hundreds of millions of years ago, but the Undying Emperor Court didn't change much. Take this barren land genius back to the Imperial Court. I'll leave first, Tianyang said lightly. Then, he disappeared from the dragon in a flash. Remember, don't play any tricks. Otherwise, I can let you go now, but I can also kill you. Yes, sir, Qian Zhongyuan said with his head lowered. Tianyang had already disappeared from his sight. Subsequently, he scoffed as he looked at Yi Chen, who was silent. What kind of genius can there be in the barren land? Don't think that you're strong enough just because you've caught the eye of the Undying Prince's relative. In fact, in the Undying Imperial Court, you're nothing. As soon as Tianyang left, the arrogance in Qian Zhongyuan's heart appeared again. However, Yi Chen had already heard about Qian Zhongyuan's character from Tianyang. He closed his eyes and said nothing. Qian Zhongyuan's expression turned extremely terrible when he saw Yi Chen being so calm and not listening to him at all. It was fine that the Undying Prince's relative ignored him. After all, the other party's status was extraordinary. However, who was this guy from the barren land? How dare he treat him like this? Don't forget my lord's words, Yi Chen said lightly when he saw that Qian Zhongyuan was about to attack. Right now, he could fight with this late-stage immortal state expert. However, now that he had entered the Undying Imperial Court, it wasn't good to cause trouble. Humph. Hearing Yi Chen mention Tianyang, Qian Zhongyuan's expression instantly turned ugly. However, he couldn't refute it. Now that you're in the inner court, behave. Otherwise, don't blame me if you're killed by the other disciples of the undying imperial court. Then, Qian Zhongyuan urged the dragon to fly toward the undying imperial court. Tianyang stood in front of a huge mountain. Looking at the scene before him, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. According to the last memory left by Emperor Tsongwu, this was the place where the complete inheritance of the Tian bloodline was stored. However, the undying Heavenly Lord, the place of worship? Tianyang looked at the undying Heavenly Lord statue that was exactly the same as the one he saw in the ruins of God. It was just as grand and majestic as the one he saw in the ruins of God. The corner of his mouth twitched. He had obtained the 3 styles of indestructible from the undying Heavenly Lord statue in the ruins of God. Even now, the 3 styles of indestructible were still very powerful. Therefore, it was reasonable for Emperor Tsongwu to place the complete inheritance of the Tian bloodline in the undying Heavenly Lord statue. However, hundreds of millions of years later, the Tian bloodline would have declined long ago. The main bloodline would have been chased into a small world like the Tianshao Great World and become a declining mortal clan. The location of the statue was very strange. If it was some mysterious cave in the depths of a mountain, Tianyang might be able to obtain it. However, in the ruins of God, Tianyang only had to move a little to attract countless people from the undying imperial court. Right now, there were several God Realm guards in charge of guarding the undying Heavenly Lord statue. They were looking at him with unfriendly gazes. If he continued to take a step forward, perhaps they would attack. Forget it. Tianyang suddenly smiled faintly and muttered to himself. I originally thought that I could obtain it directly. That way I could complete both missions. Now it seems like I should complete the main mission first. Tianyang chuckled. On the side, the God Realm guards of the undying imperial court who were in charge of guarding the statue had strange expressions. Who are you? What do you want? These God Realm guards were not like Qian Zhongyuan. They were only at the early stage of the God Realm. It was normal that they had never seen someone like the undying prince. Thus, they would not change their attitude because of Tianyang's disguise. Where is the undying prince's cultivation place? Tianyang smiled and asked. Undying prince? His Highness? The godly realm guard was stunned when he heard that. He then pointed at the floating mountain in the sky. There seemed to be some kind of spatial barrier on it. When Tianyang had just reached the imperial court, he could not see it. Now, he could see it clearly. Why are you asking about the undying prince's cultivation place? After subconsciously pointing it out, the God Realm Guard's expression changed, and he hurriedly asked. However, Tianyang's figure had already disappeared. He left behind a clear shout. 3 days later, let's fight to the death. I, Tianyang, will help the undying imperial court kill the undying prince. A declaration of war. End of chapter. Chapter 1749. In 3 days we'll fight to the death. This was another reason why Tianyang came here. Tianyang wanted to end the battle quickly, so he naturally did not have that much time to waste in the Immortal Emperor Court. There was no lack of experts in the Immortal Emperor Court. Although Tianyang could sense that the emperors in the Immortal Emperor Court were not as powerful as the Snow Goddess. However, there might be someone who was proficient in the power of the soul and ocular techniques that could see through Tianyang's disguise. Moreover, there was also a godly venerable level super-existence. Tianyang had some confidence in dealing with an emperor. However, against a godly venerable, he had taken the wrong path. He could not even defeat the Snow Goddess, who was thousands of miles away from a godly venerable. Moreover, a godly venerable was an existence that had completely surpassed the emperor level. This, under the effect of Tianyang's divine power, this challenge was repeated more than 3 times. Moreover, the entire immortal Emperor court could hear it clearly. The few godly stage guards guarding the immortal heavenly venerable statue were completely shocked when they heard this. Someone actually dared to provoke the immortal emperor? Sending a challenge to the immortal emperor? Wasn't this courting death? Hurry up and report it to the Lord. Immediately, the few godly stage guards looked at each other and hurriedly took out their communication tokens to send the message to the immortal emperor court's higher-up. Relying on the aura that he had left on Yi Chen in advance, Tianyang easily arrived at Yi Chen's current residence. You're so arrogant? Tianyang's chaos divine power was enough to spread throughout the entire immortal emperor court. Yi Chen looked at the calm Tianyang in front of him. Now, even he could not help but be dumbfounded. So, this was what Tianyang meant when he said that he would not be able to stay in the immortal emperor court for long? As soon as he arrived, he sent a challenge to the immortal emperor court. They would fight to the death in 3 days. How could he stay for such a long time? You actually came back alive? Yi Chen looked at Tianyang in front of him and finally said this. He had not been idle before and had investigated the recent situation of the immortal emperor court. To have a sentry every 3 steps and a sentry every 10 steps was already an understatement. Almost every inch of the ground was being scanned by the astral body of a powerhouse. Yi Chen even felt that there were people constantly monitoring the inner sect cave abode. Tianyang had issued such a violent challenge, yet no one had noticed? Of course. Tianyang chuckled. Tianyang didn't just randomly pick a place to issue a challenge. In order to maintain the tranquility of the immortal heavenly venerate statue, there were only a few immortal state guards monitoring the surroundings. Tianyang could kill those divine realm warriors in one move. After saying that, he immediately used the boundless secret technique, and no one would be able to find him. Tianyang naturally had his own considerations when he issued the challenge. With the undying prince's arrogance, it was impossible for him not to come when he was challenged, especially by an old enemy. Similarly, the undying prince would not allow anyone to interfere in this fair and square battle. Therefore, Tianyang was taking advantage of the situation. Borrowing the undying prince's power, he forced the undying emperor to not make a move. In this way, Tianyang would have no chance of being killed by countless powerhouses of the undying emperor's court. Of course, Tianyang did not tell Yi Chen about this. However, you're doing well. You're willing to stay in the inner sect of the undying emperor's court for 3 days? Tianyang chuckled. Hearing this, Yi Chen's face turned solemn. In order to destroy the undying emperor's court as soon as possible, as long as I can play a role, I can stay for even a second. Moreover, even if you want to plot for a long time, I won't stay here for too long. Cultivating in the undying emperor's court is a favor to me. If I continue to deal with them, it won't be reasonable, so I'm naturally willing to leave. Yi Chen said. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly. Since that was the case, there was no need to worry. Next, it was within these 3 days, he would properly deal with the undying emperor's court. Tianyang. When the undying emperor heard the challenge, his slightly squinted eyes instantly opened. A flash of light burst out from his deep black pupils. At the side, the elder who was silently watching the undying emperor's court suddenly spoke. How dare you provoke the undying emperor's court? Emperor's son, kill him immediately. In an instant, an extremely powerful emperor's aura burst out. The scepter in his hand paused, and the surrounding space seemed to freeze. He was the 4th of the 5 emperors of the undying emperor's court, known as the Wild Tiger Emperor. Waves of killing intent were released from the Wild Tiger Emperor's body. As long as the undying emperor nodded, he would immediately attack and kill Tianyang. No. However, to the Wild Tiger Emperor's surprise, the undying emperor shook his head lightly, and a flash of battle intent flashed in his eyes. In the surroundings, waves of undying divine fire burned, but the strange thing was that the scrolls did not show any signs of burning. Seeing this, the wild tiger emperor's pupils constricted slightly. The undying divine fire could be said to have natural high temperature and destructive power. Even they could only restrain the destructive power of the undying divine fire from being released. Why did the undying emperor's undying divine fire give him the feeling that it was not destructive at all? The current me has already taken the first step to becoming a supreme god. The undying emperor said indifferently, the supreme god Tao is to create one's own laws. Now that my undying divine fire has surpassed the mortal realm, I can control it as I wish. Then, the undying divine fire changed again. A part of it ignited the useless scrolls. The other part retained the characteristic of not having any destructive power. Seeing this, the wild tiger emperor's hands trembled slightly. This is, the undying emperor's technique had already surpassed the last 3 of the 5 emperors of the undying emperor's court, including himself. This level of understanding of the Tao. Was he really someone who was not even 500 years old? If I become an emperor, my undying divine fire will also transform. The undying emperor said again. With a wave of his hand, the countless undying divine fire disappeared, as if they had never existed. At that time, my path to becoming a supreme god will be even smoother. The undying emperor's forehead flashed, and a projection appeared in front of him. This was the memory of the battle between his divine power clone and Tianyang. At that time, he was only a peak heavenly great saint, but he was able to injure my divine power clone. Now, he has stepped into the divine world, and came to the undying emperor's court. With this speed of improvement, he is worthy of being my opponent. The undying emperor said indifferently, I am only 1 step away from becoming an emperor. Hearing this, the wild tiger emperor was so excited that tears almost filled his eyes. Even the current supreme god of the undying emperor's court had only become an emperor when he was a few thousand years old. The final battle with Tianyang is very important, so I will not allow you to interfere. 3 days later, I will use Tianyang's blood to complete my path to becoming an emperor. Chapter 1750. The undying emperor palace was a city. Tianyang's godly energy was coincidentally not controlled properly. Apart from the undying emperor palace, there was still a portion of it that was transmitted to the cities outside. In an instant, the news of Tianyang, who was wanted by the undying emperor palace for many years, suddenly appearing in the undying emperor palace and challenging the undying emperor palace to a duel 3 days later, spread through the entire undying emperor city. Did you know? Tianyang, who was wanted by the undying emperor palace for many years without any results, has appeared in the undying emperor palace. The news spread like a storm, and in the blink of an eye, it had spread through the streets of the undying emperor city. Tianyang. Hearing this, someone exclaimed in shock. Is it really that Tianyang? Of course. The person who heard the news was clearly incomparably excited. It said that only those around the undying emperor palace can hear it. In other words, the voice came from the undying emperor palace. So, if it's not Tianyang, could it be that the undying emperor palace is putting on a show? That Tianyang is so strong? The undying emperor palace is known as the #1 genius of the divine world. The #1 genius of the northern divine world is more or less the same. The undying emperor palace isn't the strongest power in the divine world. How could there be a true #1 genius in the divine world? This Tianyang. Maybe he's a young man from deep in the mountains who rose rapidly and has the strength to fight against the undying emperor palace. 3 days later, there will be a good show. In the streets of the undying emperor city, there were countless similar discussions. In a small alley at the location of Tianji. Tianyang? Challenging the undying emperor palace? The young man wearing Tianji's signature white robe raised his eyebrows. Interesting, there's no such person in the Tian clan of the divine world. Could it be that he left the divine world a few 100 million years ago? The young man in white robe laughed lightly. That's interesting. This Tianyang's rise is terrifying even in the divine world, but in a secondary world it's really strange. The great calamity is coming. Could it be, at this point, the white-robed young man suddenly stopped talking, as if he was talking about some ancient taboo. 3 days later. The news had already spread throughout the Undying Emperor City and Undying Emperor City. The higher-ups of the Undying Emperor's palace didn't pursue Tianyang under the orders of the Undying Prince. However, the monitoring of the Undying Emperor Palace was much more intense. The report of the guards also reached the ears of the upper echelons of the Undying Imperial Hall. However, no matter how long they searched around the immortal Heavenly Venerate statue, they couldn't find any clues. Even when Emperor Wild Tiger took action, he only discovered a slight change in space. As for the direction of this change, he was unable to find it. If they wanted to find Tianyang, they would need the help of the top 2 sovereign emperors. It was a pity that the first 2 imperial emperors were still outside the imperial court realm and couldn't return. He's just a clown who escaped with a single strike. There's no need for you all to search for him. He will definitely appear today. The Undying Prince said indifferently. In these 3 days, he had given up on dealing with the matters of the Undying Emperor Palace and focused on preparing for the final battle. Let's set the location at the Sky Capital Peak, the Undying Prince said. Balls of undying divine fire were already burning around him. Those who were familiar with the Undying Prince would know that the Undying Prince had already ignited his battle intent. Usually, when this happened, the Undying Prince would challenge the strongest prodigy of the past, or an older generation senior who was even stronger than the Undying Prince himself. However, Tianyang was only at the peak of the early-stage God realm. Compared to the Undying Prince, who was at the half-step Sovereign Emperor realm, the difference was like heaven and earth. Sky Capital Peak. Hearing this, an elder from the Undying Emperor Palace exclaimed. The last time the Sky Capital Peak was used it was the Undying Prince's young master who challenged the previous generation's strongest prodigy Yan Wujin. In the end, the Undying Prince won. Emperor Huang who said and looked at the Undying Prince. Prince, you're just a peak early-stage God realm cultivator from a small world. Is there a need to activate the Sky Capital Peak? Ordinary people wouldn't have much of a reaction when they heard the name of the Sky Capital Peak. They would just think that it was an ordinary name. However, the members of the Undying Imperial Court had heard of the Sky Capital Peak's name. In other words, the entire divine world would have heard of it. Imperial Peak. It was said that during the immemorial era, the Undying Heavenly Lord and another immemorial emperor had fought and sunk mountains and rivers. Other than the Imperial Peak, the land within 100 million miles had sunk. Instead of saying that the Imperial Peak was a mountain, it would be more accurate to say that the land within 100 million miles around the Imperial Peak was a basin. The significance of the Imperial Peak to the Undying Emperor Palace was no less than the Undying Emperor City to the Undying Emperor Palace. Such a place would only be opened when an incomparably grand ceremony or a martial arts competition of great significance was held. However, the elders of the Undying Emperor Palace were also doubtful of this point. What did Tianyang do to allow him to enter the Sky Capital Peak that was equivalent to the sacred ground of the Undying Emperor Palace? Based on my current authority, I don't need your permission to open the Sky Capital Peak. The Undying Prince said faintly. His words were filled with unquestionable dominance. This was the Undying Prince's character. Once he had decided on something, he would never change his mind. All right, then we'll go and prepare now. After the Undying Prince finished his sentence, the elders who were against the idea immediately shut their mouths. In the Undying Emperor Palace, the Undying Prince was the one who had the most authority after the 5 imperial emperors and the hierarch emperor. Currently, 2 of the 5 imperial emperors were outside and the hierarch emperor was in seclusion. The undying prince was naturally the strongest existence. Once the undying prince made a decision, he wouldn't change it. After all the elders left, the undying prince's eyes flickered as he looked into the distance. I wonder how I can kill Tianyang. Early morning. The undying prince had chosen the sky capital peak of the undying emperor palace. The news had spread across the entire undying emperor city. At the same time, the undying emperor palace struck while the iron was hot. Since they had chosen the sky capital peak, they didn't care how many people went and opened the legendary imperial peak. Their intention was clear. They wanted everyone in the undying emperor city to witness the battle of the undying prince. They wanted everyone to know how strong the undying prince was. At the same time, at the foot of the sky capital peak, a young man raised his head and looked at the countless experts who had been waiting for a long time. He smiled lightly. He stepped onto the steps that led to the peak. Undying Emperor Palace, Tianyang is here. Chapter 1751. Sky Capital Peak. It was 10 million miles tall, 990,000 steps tall. Originally, it was just a piece of flat land that had survived the battle between the undying Heavenly Lord and an immemorial emperor. Ever since the Sky Capital Peak was formed, the undying Emperor Court had regarded it as a holy land. Today was not only the battle between the undying prince and Tianyang, it was also the opening day of the Sky Capital Peak that had never been opened to the public. Just the second was enough to attract countless people, not to mention the battle between the undying prince and Tianyang. The name Heavenly Sun was a household name in the entire God realm, even if it wasn't as well known as a thunderclap. He was the only person that the undying Emperor Court had not been able to kill even after several years of issuing an arrest warrant. He had appeared in the undying Emperor Court and was going to fight the undying prince at the Sky Capital Peak? It was as if everyone was coming. Someone is coming from the foot of the mountain. Those who could step onto the Sky Capital Peak were all experts above the Heavenly Emperor realm. Even if they were at the peak, they could still see the commotion at the foot of the mountain. A young man in a black robe with a pitch-black longsword on his back appeared. He ignored everyone and stepped onto the first step of the 990,000 steps. That's Tianyang? Why does he look even younger than the one on the arrest warrant? Seeing Tianyang's face, someone immediately exclaimed. In their eyes, no matter how young Tianyang was, he should be at the same age as the undying prince. The undying prince was about 400 years old, and he was already a half-step immortal emperor. Tianyang might be 600 or 700 years old. However, Tianyang did not use the primal chaos godly law to conceal his life aura. His life aura that was less than 100 years old was directly exposed to the senses of countless experts. Less than 100 years old? How is that possible? Instantly, an elder of the undying Emperor Court exclaimed. They only knew that the undying prince had once condensed a divine clone and went to the lower realm to deal with Tianyang. At that time, Tianyang was only at the peak of the Heaven Great Sage realm. Now, Tianyang's cultivation base. He was at the peak of the early stage immortal realm. What kind of speed is this? Even Emperor Wild Tiger was moved. Although the undying prince had sealed himself for 50 years and sealed his cultivation for 100 years, he was still in the immortal state. However, it hadn't even been 10 years since the prince had sent his clone to the great arcane world. In less than 10 years, he had advanced from the pinnacle of the Heaven Great Sage realm to the deity realm. His speed was even faster than the undying prince. How can there be a genius stronger than the crown prince in this world? The undying Emperor Hall's elder exclaimed in shock. At this time, Tianyang had already ascended the Sky Capital Peak one step at a time. Those who were not strong enough to see Tianyang also saw Tianyang now. Everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at Tianyang's excessively young face, unable to speak for a long time. Tianyang, on the other hand, was still smiling as he slowly ascended. However, some people noticed the steps that Tianyang had taken. In the center of every step there was a faint pitch-black footprint. Burning above it was the undying divine flame. Immortal fire? Could it be? Suddenly, some people's pupils shrank as they thought of a secret. Tianyang's speed didn't seem fast, but in a few breaths' time, he reached the 100,000th step. At the 100,000th step, Tianyang suddenly realized that the 990,000th step of the sky capital peak actually had a powerful aura. However, Tianyang sensed that it was only at the 100,000th step that Tianyang could sense. At the peak of the sky capital peak, Emperor Wild Tiger raised an eyebrow when he saw Tianyang suddenly stop in his tracks. He said coldly, "It's just 100,000th step and you can't take it? 100,000th step is just the aura of an early-stage immortal state. If you can't take it, you're courting death by coming to the undying Emperor Hall." Emperor Wild Tiger said disdainfully. From the beginning, he had never taken Tianyang seriously. Compared to the so-called geniuses of the secondary worlds, Emperor Wild Tiger believed that the undying Emperor Hall was the strongest genius in the universe. If it wasn't for Tianyang's strange methods that caused the undying Emperor Hall to put up a bounty for him for so long, he would have died a long time ago. Now that he came to the undying Emperor Hall to challenge the undying Emperor Hall, it was the biggest joke in the world. No. The undying Emperor Hall said. "He's moving." Moreover, he was even faster than before. Although his movements were still the same, it was obvious that Tianyang's speed had increased. In just a few minutes, he had already reached the 200,000th step. The strength of his aura had already reached the mid-stage of the immortal state. If Tianyang can't even reach the peak of the sky capital peak, he's not worthy to be my opponent. The undying Emperor Hall said indifferently. Hearing this, the elders at the side nodded slightly. However, even if Tianyang managed to reach the peak, it only proves that he's strong. The previous strongest genius of the divine world, Yan Wujin, directly reached the peak of the sky capital peak. This Tianyang is still taking one step at a time. It's obvious that he's not strong enough. Emperor Hall, you defeated Yan Wujin the last time. This Tianyang isn't as strong as Yan Wujin, it's a waste to show off like this. Emperor Wild Tiger said indifferently. The undying Emperor Hall shook his head. I don't think so. At this time, Tianyang had already reached the 300,000th step. His aura had already reached the peak of the mid-stage of the immortal state. At the 500,000th step, his aura reached the late stage of the immortal state. At the 900,000th step, his aura reached the peak of the late stage of the immortal state. Thus, the first 100,000 steps were filled with people. The higher the steps, the fewer people there were. In the end, only the people from the undying Emperor Hall were left. Although the sacred mountain was open to the public, the undying Emperor Hall was still unwilling to let others step on the peak. Can Tianyang win? At the side, the voice of the heaven's expanse Saint Spirit rang out. The vast expanse Saint Spirit had witnessed Tianyang being killed by the undying Emperor Hall with her own eyes. Therefore, when the battle between Tianyang and the undying Emperor Hall began, the vast expanse Saint Spirit immediately rushed to the undying Emperor Hall. Even the restored Emperor-level weapon was brought along by the vast expanse shrine. If Tianyang was in danger, the vast expanse shrine would be able to block a few Emperor-level attacks and bring Tianyang away. Of course, no matter how strong the undying Emperor Hall is, can he be stronger than Goddess Shui? Tianyang even injured Goddess Shui. The vast expanse Saint Spirit said casually. However, they did not realize that there were a few familiar faces below. Yi Chen, who had changed his appearance, Jiang Xian, Little Dragon God, and many others. 3 days was more than enough for them to come. At this time, the sun hung high in the sky. Tianyang had stepped onto the 900,000th step and reached the peak. Behind him, the 900,000th pitch-black footprints formed a straight line from the beginning to the end without any deviation. Clusters of undying divine flames burned brightly. I have to respect the undying Heavenly Lord. That's why I walked up one step at a time. Tianyang chuckled softly. Now, the Tian clan is back to collect the debt. Chapter 1752. My Tian clan is here to collect the debt. Tianyang smiled as the black sword behind him shot into the sky. Then, it turned into a terrifying sword light that shot down from the sky. Boom! On the ground of Capital Sky Peak, an inverted black longsword suddenly appeared. It was so fast that even the elders of the Undying Emperor Palace couldn't react in time. How dare you! Monarch Wild Tiger was the first to react as he snapped furiously. How dare he be so arrogant in front of so many elders of the Undying Emperor Palace? However, in the next moment, Wild Tiger Emperor reacted. The Tian clan? Wild Tiger Emperor's pupils contracted as he looked at Tianyang in disbelief. Everyone in the upper echelon of the Undying Emperor Palace knew about the Tian clan. The Undying Heavenly Sovereign's surname was Tian. To put it bluntly, the Qian clan was trying to usurp the throne. Hasn't the Tian clan already been exterminated? Why is there still in another great world? Monarch Wild Tiger immediately reacted. His eyes were burning with murderous intent. Oh! At this moment the Undying Prince spoke. I know about the Tian clan. However, that great world shouldn't be where the Tian clan is located. However, it doesn't matter whether it is or not, the Undying Prince said indifferently. In the next moment, the peak of the late-stage God realm had reached the level of a half-step Imperial Emperor. No matter if it's the Tian clan or you, Tianyang, there's only one ending today. I'll destroy all of you. In the next moment, the Undying Prince's figure disappeared. The elders of the Undying Emperor Palace quickly retreated. This battle was between the Undying Prince and Tianyang. No one else was allowed to interfere. You're a bit slow. Tianyang smiled as he punched his right fist in a tricky direction. Boom! The two enormous forces collided as the two fists collided. Both of them were pushed back several steps. Then, the great void sword embryo that Tianyang threw in front of him rose into the air and turned into a flying sword, slashing towards the Undying Prince. That's all, the Undying Prince said indifferently, and the undying divine fire exploded. In the next moment, a palm print was thrown out from the immortal prince's hand. Immortal Great Mystery Palm. This was the second of the Undying Heavenly Lord's 3 indestructible moves. The undying divine flame burned fiercely, releasing a monstrous divine power. He sent the great void sword embryo flying. At the same time, he disappeared from where he stood. Tianyang smiled and reached out with his right hand. The great void sword embryo that had been sent flying by the Undying Prince landed in his hand. 3 indestructible forms? Tianyang smiled faintly, and with a kick of his feet, he shot toward the sky. Me too. 5 swords of the Empyrean. Unleashing the power of his bloodline, the boundless pitch-black flames fused with the true flames of destruction to form a terrifying sword light. Sword chi swept across 30,000 miles, freezing 19 continents with a single sword. Boom! Even though the Undying Prince had activated his movement skill and burst out with extreme speed, Tianyang could still easily see through him and hit him with his sword. However, the strange thing was that the Heavenly Lord's 5 sword strikes hit the Undying Prince's body, but it did not leave a single mark. This sword strike was enough to flatten the entire sky capital peak. What a powerful spiritual soul! What a powerful physical body! The Undying Prince and Tianyang exclaimed at the same time. However, in the next moment, the two of them disappeared again. A murderous intent flashed across the Undying Prince's eyes. Although Tianyang's sword strike did not hurt him, the Undying Prince could see that. As long as Tianyang used a move stronger than this sword strike, it would be able to break his extremely tough physical body. His physical body had been tempered countless times by the flames of heaven and earth and nurtured by countless treasures. How could Tianyang use such a move? Well then, the warm-up is over. The undying prince threw out a punch. 3 indestructible moves, indestructible burning sky seal. After destroying Tianyang's sword strike, the undying prince said in a calm voice. Then, the surrounding undying divine fire burned wildly as if it could reach the heavens. The warm-up is over? That's great. Tianyang chuckled. The true flames of destruction and the undying divine fire turned into 2 fire dragons that intertwined and burned around him. Then, the heavenly sword in his soul appeared on the great void sword embryo. Looking at the 2 people in the sky who had summoned their undying divine fire, the crowd could not help but gasp. Both of them were able to use the immortal divine flame? And why? They felt that Tianyang's undying divine fire was not much weaker than the undying prince's. Now take this. The undying prince snorted. His body disappeared and then reappeared in front of Tianyang, less than 10 feet away. At the same time, the undying prince's divine power, which was at the peak of the late-stage divine realm and only half a step away from the imperial emperor realm, exploded wildly. Supreme fist of the world. As he threw out a punch, it was as if a supreme young divine king had appeared behind the undying prince. He chanted a mysterious divine incantation and wore a golden armor. When he threw out a punch, it suppressed the heavens and the earth. I am the supreme fist of the world. In the next moment, the young divine king's shadow attacked. This punch was not one of the many martial arts techniques passed down by the undying emperor court. Instead, it was created by the undying prince himself, a supreme fist technique exclusive to the undying prince. The young divine king's punch was not fast. It was just ordinary. However, it was clear that the undying prince's law of space was not the law of space. However, there was nothing left in the surrounding space. Everything was frozen. The world had become the stage for the undying prince's performance. When I throw out this punch, it will suppress the gods and demons, the undying prince said. Then, the punch exploded with extreme speed and blasted toward Tianyang. However, Tianyang, who was supposed to be frozen along with the surrounding space, suddenly grinned. Supreme fist of the world? I wonder how your supreme fist of the world compares to my emperor fist? In the next moment, endless battle intent appeared in Tianyang's eyes. The strongest of the Archean 9 emperors, the true intent of the firmament battle emperor, appeared on his body. Compared to the undying prince's supreme fist, this punch was obviously stronger in terms of momentum. Although the supreme fist of the world had a few seconds to accumulate momentum, this punch was still able to catch up. This was a supreme emperor technique. What is this? The undying prince's face suddenly changed. This was the first time the undying prince's expression had changed since the start of the battle. However, the undying prince did not slow down. Balls of undying divine fire burned on the supreme fist of the world. He raised the power of this punch to the extreme. A punch was thrown. Tianyang's punch was also condensed to the extreme. His eyes were like flames, burning with battle intent. Boom! Emperor Battle of the 8 Baron. Chapter 1753. Supreme Fist. War of the Emperors. The young divine king roared into the sky, unleashing boundless divine might. Tianyang's eyes burned with fighting spirit as he unleashed his emperor technique to meet the attack head-on. Boom! The fists of the 2 men collided fiercely. A shock wave visible to the naked eye appeared at the center of the collision between the 2 fists. Then, with a terrifying speed, it swept out in all directions. The group of undying Emperor Palace elders' faces changed slightly as they felt an indescribable feeling. Meanwhile, Emperor Wild Tiger's face changed drastically after a brief moment of shock. Boom! The space within 100 miles shattered inch by inch. The sky above Sky Capital Peak had completely turned into a place where spatial turbulence wreaked havoc. In fact, the spatial fragments had even turned into spatial storms. Even a Saint Realm expert might not be able to survive in the spatial storms. He blocked it. The Undying Prince's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Tianyang, who had collided with him. His supreme fist was blocked by a cultivator who was only at the peak of the early stage martial god realm. Boom! There was another loud bang. The two of them retreated at the same time as their right arms exploded. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Even with their tough bodies, they could not withstand the impact of the two fists, and their right arms were shattered. However, in the blink of an eye, the undying divine flame burned and the right arm reappeared. "You've cultivated the immortal blood to such a level?" The Undying Prince looked at Tianyang, who had completed the blood rebirth at the same time as him, and his face changed slightly. He had received the most orthodox inheritance and cultivated it countless times before he could master the blood rebirth technique. How could someone with a bloodline density of the Undying Emperor Palace catch up to him? "Wait, your bloodline density has increased?" The Undying Prince then noticed something strange about Tianyang's body. Boom! However, Tianyang did not give the Undying Prince a chance to talk nonsense. He unleashed the Heavenly Expanse secret technique and appeared in front of the Undying Prince in a breath's time. Then, he threw out another punch. Boundless divine power was released, and the Undying Prince reacted quickly and hurriedly blocked the attack. However, although Tianyang's punch was not as powerful as the previous War of the Emperors, it was not much weaker. The Undying Prince was sent flying by the punch. "Sure." The Undying Prince snorted coldly. "Since you insist on dying, don't blame me." In the next moment, a strange divine power fluctuation was released from the Undying Prince's body. The world around him shook slightly. At this moment, the raging spatial turbulence and spatial storm suddenly stopped. "The power of the world!" the Undying Prince roared. Everything within 80,000 miles was under the Undying Prince's control. In an instant, the Undying Prince seemed to have become the only ruler within a radius of 80,000 miles. Taking a step forward, it was as if he was stepping on an invisible staircase. Step by step, he walked up to the sky above the sun. "This is the world Yu's world. Your strength is not bad. However, you are just a little bit away from opening up your own small world. If we were to fight again in a few decades, you might be able to defeat me," the Undying Prince said. In the next moment, every corner of the Undying Prince's world turned into the source of the black flames. The endless undying divine fire rushed toward Tianyang. "You're not bad either." At this moment, Tianyang smirked. "But you're just a little short." "That's it. You're weaker than me." Boom! Endless chaotic divine power erupted from Tianyang's body. In an instant, all the undying divine fire around him was extinguished by the chaotic divine power. Stubborn boom! The power of the world within 100,000 miles exploded. In an instant, the power of the world within 80,000 miles of the Undying Prince's world was completely suppressed by Tianyang. The great void sword embryo in Tianyang's hand shone with 9 colors of Shengguang. Martial soul talent, sky-devouring secret technique. The power of the world around him, including the Undying Prince's power of the world, was forcibly swallowed by the sky-devouring secret technique into Tianyang's body. In an instant, Tianyang's cultivation rose from the peak of the early stage of the God Realm to the peak of the late stage of the God Realm. "Now, who's stronger?" Tianyang chuckled and disappeared at this moment. Then, he slashed out with his sword. Green Lotus Sword Principle. Green Lotus Sword Song. Green lotus blooms from the earth. In the blink of an eye, green lotuses of swords emerged from every corner of the world. It was the same as when the Undying Prince summoned the undying divine fire in his world. However, Tianyang's green lotus blooms from the earth. It was even stronger than the Undying Prince's undying divine fire. Boom! Boom! The undying prince was sent flying by the green lotus blooms from the earth. This time, countless sword lights finally injured the undying prince's body. Streams of blood spurted out, and the undying prince also spat out a mouthful of blood. However, at this moment, the undying prince snorted coldly. Under his control, a powerful power of the world turned into a sharp blade and slashed around fiercely. Boom! Tianyang's chaotic small world could not withstand the attack of the undying prince's world blade. A huge crack appeared on it. Then, the undying prince's body flashed and he left Tianyang's chaotic small world's range of control. Seeing this, Tianyang's eyes flashed. The undying prince's strength was indeed strong. In order to prevent the undying prince from forcibly tearing the chaotic small world's void boundary, Tianyang had deliberately strengthened it. However, the undying prince's strength and reaction speed were still beyond Tianyang's expectations. He was only enveloped by the power of the small world for a few seconds before he made a prompt decision to break Tianyang's world barrier with all his strength. However, since he was an opponent that Tianyang regarded so highly, Tianyang naturally would not underestimate the undying prince. Even if the undying prince really exceeded his expectations and successfully broke through the chaotic small world's void boundary. Boom! Chaos, Heaven Splitter! A sword light that looked like the beginning of heaven and earth slashed fiercely at the undying prince, who had just broken through Tianyang's chaotic small world. This was Tianyang's strongest move aside from the heaven realm, the Heaven Splitter sword technique. What? The undying prince had just broken through the world barrier when he was instantly enveloped by the terrifying sword light. Instantly, his expression changed drastically. He could not even maintain his previous aloof indifference. He roared with all his might and released all his divine power. Boom! 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 Countless undying divine flames were condensed by the undying prince and blasted toward the Heaven Splitter sword technique. However, it was useless. Boom! In the end, the sword slashed open the undying prince's body and split him into two. Blood spurted out wildly. Seeing that, everyone was completely astonished. At that moment, an extremely gloomy and cold voice sounded. I have to admit you. Under the burning of the undying divine flames, the undying prince's body continued to recover. His eyes flashed with violent killing intent. You've angered me. Chapter 1754. You've angered me. His body was sliced in half by the heaven-opening sword art. Even the undying divine flame needed more than 10 seconds to recover. When the undying prince said that, his body was still bleeding profusely. Now you're qualified to know my name. The undying divine flame spun beneath the undying prince's feet, forming a ring of fire. The undying prince's divine energy also burst out at this moment. Below them, the experts from the undying Emperor City, and even the entire divine world, who had rushed over were all dumbfounded by what they saw. Why did they feel that? From the beginning, the undying prince and Tianyang were fighting. The undying prince was at a disadvantage. Previously, the undying prince was sliced in half by a sudden slash. They knew that the undying divine body of the undying Emperor Court was extremely powerful. If one cultivated it to a terrifying level, they might not die even if their divine soul was shattered. However, Tianyang was still alive and well. He did not suffer any serious injuries. On the other hand, the undying prince was at a disadvantage, and even had his body sliced in half. Wasn't this gap a little too big? However, after hearing the undying prince's words, the elders of the undying Emperor Court trembled. Prince, you're going to get serious. Wild Tiger Emperor said. Very few people in the divine world knew the undying prince's name. The world only knew the undying prince's name, but they did not know his real name. My name is Etian. I'm Qian Etian. The undying prince said slowly. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. The undying prince's aura surged crazily. It was as if he had unlocked some kind of seal. At this moment, the undying prince's cultivation had surpassed the half-step emperor realm. He was infinitely close to the emperor realm. What? Seeing this, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. Seeing this, his heart skipped a beat. The undying prince hadn't even used his full strength before? Previously, Endless Flame only managed to force me to release this seal at the very last moment. The undying prince said coldly. Around him, a powerful aura was released. At this moment, the surrounding space turbulence seemed to have been wiped out by some powerful force. The name is the seal of His Highness, the Crown Prince. Emperor Wild Tiger said respectfully. Before this, he had only addressed the undying prince as Prince. After the undying prince revealed his real name, he directly leveled up and became the Lord Prince. Those who chant my true name shall see eternal life in the cycle of reincarnation, the undying prince said calmly. The undying divine flames in his hand turned into a long sword. Just by existing in this world, it caused waves of spatial fluctuations. This space could no longer withstand the power of the sword of divine fire. Hiss! Seeing this, countless people below sucked in a breath of cold air, and their expressions changed drastically. Previously, when Tianyang had cut the undying prince's body in half, they had thought that the undying prince was in a desperate situation. But now, the undying prince's cultivation had been sealed? Was that his full strength just now? The undying prince held the sword of divine fire in his hand, and stood proudly in the void. A powerful aura that was infinitely close to that of an emperor was released from the undying prince's body. You're stronger than Yen Wujin, much stronger, the undying prince said. Hearing this, the people below were shocked. The undying prince had admitted Tianyang's strength? Who was Yen Wujin? He was the strongest genius of the previous generation in the divine world. At that time, his ruling power was not much weaker than the undying prince's. Tianyang was stronger than Yen Wujin? Therefore, it's worth it for me to use my strongest emperor weapon, the undying prince said slowly, and the aura on his body became stronger. The surrounding space gradually froze. Tianyang's expression changed slightly. At this moment, the undying prince stretched out his right hand, and the sword of divine fire burned with a ball of black flames. Then, an extremely powerful aura was released from the sword of divine fire. From top to bottom, it was 7 feet and 7 inches in total, revealing the pitch-black body of the sword. This sword has the power to seize the heavens. It's called the Sky Plunderer's Sword, the undying prince said. In the next moment, the powerful divine energy that he had accumulated gathered like a storm. The surrounding heaven and earth also trembled slightly. Next, it's my strongest attack. Wild Tiger Emperor's face was filled with excitement. Could it be that the Emperor has already mastered that Emperor technique? That's a supreme killing technique created by the previous generation's ultimate god with all his might. As expected of the strongest heaven's pride in the deity realm. Wild Tiger Emperor shouted excitedly. At this moment, the undying prince's divine energy had already sealed Tianyang. Although the undying prince's world energy was not as strong as Tianyang's, after the seal was removed, the same amount of world energy was much stronger. Tianyang could not move at all. Emperor Technique, Universal Destruction Technique. The undying prince snorted and slashed down with his sword. The space within a radius of 80,000 miles bloomed with endless silver light. It was as if a mountain had collapsed. Countless spaces collapsed with Tianyang as the center. The surrounding space turbulence was controlled by the undying prince. The Sky Plunderer's sword also slashed out endless divine fire. This was the undying prince's supreme emperor technique. The undying emperor's previous supreme god had created the pinnacle of the space divine law. Universal destruction technique. Even Tianyang did not expect that the undying prince's divine law was not the undying emperor's traditional undying divine law, but the space divine law. At this moment, the endless space completely collapsed. The tearing force from the entire world ruthlessly acted on Tianyang's body. In an instant, Tianyang's body disappeared, as if he had been killed by the Emperor technique. Even the Undying Prince's divine soul could not sense Tianyang's aura. At this moment, the Undying Prince's face darkened slightly. A deep, murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Whether Tianyang was dead or not, he would not let him go so easily. Even if he died, the Undying Prince wanted to see Tianyang die at the very last moment. The Sky Plunderer's sword burned with flames once again. His body flashed as he charged into the countless collapsed spaces. The Undying Prince would never give his opponent a chance to counterattack. The last sword. The endless space flashed with silver light. The Undying Prince's expression was cold as he slashed out with his sword. At this moment, a hand reached out from the place where the endless silver light had collapsed. "Hello." Tianyang's voice came from within. The Undying Prince's expression changed slightly as he slashed down with his sword. All the divine power in his body exploded. However, at the moment when he slashed down, a strange fluctuation swept past. The Undying Divine Fire, the Emperor's divine power, and the Space Divine Law all disappeared. The collapsed space around Tianyang also disappeared in an instant, leaving behind only endless chaos. Facing the Undying Prince, Tianyang smiled and opened his arms. "Welcome to my divine realm." Chapter 1755. Welcome to my deity realm. Tianyang tilted his head and chuckled. In the next moment, the endless chaos around him expanded rapidly and swallowed the Undying Prince. Boom! At this moment, even the Undying Prince's power of the realm was destroyed by the endless chaos. There was no reason to speak of. They were completely erased. Replaced. It turned the surrounding heaven and earth into a world of chaos. How is this possible?" the Undying Prince said hoarsely as he looked at Tianyang, who was unscathed. Not even his robes were damaged. How was this possible? He even felt that the majestic divine power in his body was rapidly disintegrating. The Undying Prince, who had everything under his control and was extremely calm from the beginning to the end, was extremely confident when he executed his final move. Now, he was terrified. "What have you done?" the Undying Prince roared. His divine power had disappeared? If he had used such a powerful move from the beginning, he would not have needed to drag the battle out for so long. He could have finished off the Undying Prince in one go. "Thank you, Emperor Tsangwu. If he had not shown me how to use the chaotic divine law, I would not have been able to think of this move." Tianyang smiled as he walked past the Undying Prince. He did not attack immediately. The Undying Prince's divine power had been sealed by Tianyang. Even if he was left with an unparalleled physical strength, he would not be able to defeat Tianyang. The outcome of the battle was completely determined. The chaotic divine law is the divine law that separated heaven and earth. It is the origin of all things and the beginning of all Taos. Before this, I only used it to simulate various mysteries. Now it seems that what I did was ridiculous. The chaotic divine law is the origin of all Taos. Why would I use the chaotic divine law to simulate other people's techniques? Tianyang sighed. He was born with terminated meridians and his talent in martial arts cultivation was almost negative. However, he had lived 2 lives and his understanding of martial arts was extremely strong. Even so, he needed Emperor Tsangwu's final reminder to understand. Even for a martial arts genius like Tianyang, he was still far from being able to comprehend the current chaos divine law out of nothing. Fortunately, he had Emperor Tsangwu, who was only a step away from becoming an ultimate god and had already mastered the way of the ultimate god. Heavenly Sun was the one who had created the strongest killing move in the world. Chaotic divine realm. What have you done? The Undying Prince's expression suddenly changed when he realized that he was losing control of his divine power bit by bit. What kind of method did Tianyang use? Chaotic divine law. Tianyang said. In my divine realm, my words are the heavenly Tao. My will is the will of the heavens. Of course, you can also call it an enhanced version of the heaven realm, Tianyang said with a smile. Heaven realm? What is that? The undying prince was the emperor's prince. An existence that was close to an imperial emperor, especially an existence that had gone through untold hardships to unseal his divine power. Once he lost his divine power, it was equivalent to losing his greatest support. The undying prince was now at his weakest. At this time, any random deity realm cultivator could possibly kill him. Now you are in my chaotic divine realm. And I said, prohibit divine power. In here, except for me, everyone's divine power will be extinguished. Tianyang said. At this moment, the endless primal chaos around them became a little transparent. However, this little bit of transparency quickly disappeared. The undying prince's eyes narrowed when he heard this. How was this possible? Only an ultimate god can cast a spell with one's words. How can you cast a spell with your words? The undying prince roared. At the same time, he used all his strength to try to activate his divine power. How could someone at the peak of the early stage of the divine realm execute such a powerful move? Tianyang shrugged when he heard this. Maybe it's because of the guidance of an ultimate god. The chaotic divine law was the primordial law of all Taos. Chaos was the origin of all laws and the end of all things. Everything was born from chaos. If it was stronger, it would not be an exaggeration to call it the heavenly Tao. For example, if Tianyang's chaotic small world continued to develop, it would not be impossible for it to create another heavenly Tao. The chaotic divine realm was the ultimate embodiment of all the power in the chaotic small world. It represented Tianyang's strongest attack. The area was very small, only 10 feet around Tianyang. However, in the chaotic divine realm, the original world had been replaced. Tianyang was the heavenly Tao here. Fortunately, you attacked me directly with your sword. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to drag you in. Tianyang smiled. After the battle with the Firmament Battle Emperor, Tianyang did not think that the undying prince would be able to get close to him so easily. Tianyang risked being killed by the universal space slaying technique and finally succeeded. You have calculated it? The undying prince asked with difficulty. It was as if Tianyang had planned this from the beginning. From the beginning to the end, he was just a pawn in Tianyang's chess game. Of course, there's still a huge flaw in this world. Even if it's my divine Tao laws, I still have to bear a huge burden in order to maintain it. Therefore, my chaotic divine realm can't be maintained for long. As soon as he finished speaking, the endless chaos around him suddenly disappeared. The immortal prince immediately took hold of the opportunity and uttered a furious roar. The monstrous undying flame turned into the most terrifying attack and charged toward Tianyang. Time stop, Tianyang said. In an instant, a distorted wave spread out to 100 feet around him. The undying prince was completely frozen by the time stop. Tianyang did not hesitate anymore. With a wave of his right hand, the heavenly sword and the great void sword embryo merged and released endless 9-colored Xinguang. Chaos, heaven splitting. In an instant, Tianyang's speed reached the limit. His body was only a phantom, and at this moment, countless sword lights were slashed out. The undying prince, on the other hand, maintained his final pose in the frozen time and space. Streaks of chaotic divine law condensed to the extreme. Tianyang withdrew his sword, turned around, and said softly. The heavenly sword on the great void sword embryo also returned to Tianyang's spirit sea. Time begins to flow. Boom. The undying prince behind Tianyang was directly cut into countless pieces by the surging chaotic divine law and sword lights. Blood spurted out, and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The undying prince's face was frozen in disbelief. He was directly defeated by Tianyang's chaotic divine law. Chapter 1756. Tianyang smiled. The undying prince behind him scattered like cherry blossoms, flying in all directions. You! Even so, the undying prince did not die. With a roar, he ignited countless undying divine flames. With his immortal divine body, even if he was severely injured, there was still a chance for him to come back to life. What he was most furious about now was that Tianyang had actually injured him to this extent twice. You've used up all your tricks. Spacetime freeze is very strong, right? Now you can't use it anymore. The undying prince had lost his mind in his rage and roared crazily. The flesh and blood that flew in all directions also flew toward the center. If the reconstruction was successful, with the undying prince's bloodline density, even if he could not recover to his peak state, he could still maintain more than half of his combat strength. It would be a piece of cake to deal with Tianyang, who had used up all his tricks and was about to lose his peak late-stage deity cultivation. You've used up all your tricks? Hearing this, Tianyang shook his head and snapped his fingers. Emperor Tsangwu, let me borrow your divine flames. Boom. Golden flames suddenly burned on the undying prince's flesh and blood. Countless golden flames blossomed in the sky like meteors, illuminating the sky. At this moment, the undying prince was horrified to find that his control over his other bodies was weakening. The flesh and blood that were gathering together suddenly disappeared. Under the burning of the golden flames, the flesh and blood seemed to have lost all vitality and fell rapidly from the sky. No. How is this possible? Your bloodline density is so low. How can you suppress my undying divine flames? At this moment, the undying prince's undying divine flames were also suppressed by the golden undying divine flames. It was completely extinguished. Of course my undying divine flames can't suppress you. But hundreds of millions of years ago, the last undying emperor of the Tian clan, is it enough? Tianyang smiled. You mean Tsangwu? How can you have Emperor Tsangwu's inheritance? The undying prince's divine soul trembled as he roared. From the beginning of the battle until now, it was the first time he truly felt death. Tianyang did not continue to reply. The group of undying emperor's elders below also reacted. They roared and directly rushed up without caring about the fairness of the battle. The undying prince must not die. However, before those undying Emperor Hall's elders could reach Heavenly Yang chuckled softly. Explode. Countless golden flames intersected, merged and finally exploded. Boom. In the sky, the most dazzling of the undying prince. Your Highness! Emperor Tsangwu's Emperor. At the same time, Emperor Tsangwu's, undying Emperor's Emperor. Apart from the first two monarchs who weren't in the undying imperial court, all the monarchs in the undying imperial court made their move. Tianyang's mouth twitched. Die Prince Tsang Prince's not die Prince fall. However, he didn't seem to have thought about it. Princes how? Run. The Heaven's Expanse Shrine can withstand it. At the same time, the Heaven's Expanse Holy Spirit, who had been hiding in the Heaven's Expanse Shrine, rushed out and blocked Tianyang's side. A majestic shrine appeared in front of Tianyang. A boundless force burst out from it. Boom. Boom. Emperor Tsangwu and the other two emperors attacked at the same time. 3 attacks landed on the Heaven's Expanse Shrine. In an instant, countless cracks appeared on the Heaven's Expanse Shrine, which had not been damaged since it was refined. Facing the attacks of the 3 emperors, even the Heaven's Expanse Shrine could not withstand it. Run! The Heaven's Expanse Holy Spirit shouted. However, Tianyang waved his hand. The Heaven's Expanse Shrine, including the Heaven's Expanse Holy Spirit, were forcefully pulled into the chaotic small world by Tianyang. The Heaven's Expanse Shrine is finished. You're finished too. Do you think I don't know? Tianyang's lips curled up as he looked at the 3 great emperors and the countless elders behind them who were floating in the air. Tianyang knew that he could no longer maintain the heaven-devouring secret technique. He could fall back to the peak of early-stage God stage at any time. Originally, when he was at the peak of late-stage God stage, he might not be able to escape from the immortal empire even if he used the Heaven's Expanse secret technique. Now that he could fall back at any time, he naturally would not let the Heaven's Expanse Holy Spirit die. However, Tianyang did not expect the Heaven's Expanse Holy Spirit to suddenly appear. This guy can even kill the immortal Emperor's son. Doesn't he have a backup plan? Below, Yi Chen gritted his teeth as he looked at Tianyang, who was facing the countless powerhouses of the immortal empire alone in the sky. He wanted to make a move, but he knew that he would not be able to withstand a single blow from any of the three emperors. He would only be courting death if he went up. Countless powerhouses of the immortal empire raised their heads and looked at Tianyang in the sky. Their hearts were filled with shock. A God stage cultivator who was unknown a few years ago was now fighting with the #1 genius of the divine world in front of countless powerhouses. In the end, he won the battle. However, he still had to face so many powerhouses of the immortal empire alone. Even if these immortal Emperor City experts hadn't even seen the heavenly sun face 3 days ago, it didn't stop them from feeling an incomparable reverence for the heavenly sun face. Emperor Wild Tiger, Emperor Zhan Lang, one more emperor, and who knows how many God stage cultivators. Tianyang looked around and smiled. The Undying Emperor Hall is really giving me face. Cut the crap. Emperor Wild Tiger glared at Tianyang and attacked immediately. How dare you kill the Emperor's son? Today you will die. Under Emperor Wild Tiger's lead, endless divine energy attacked Tianyang fiercely. Within 3 feet, only I can break the sword domain. Tianyang roared and slashed out with the great void sword embryo in his hand. Countless sword lights slashed out and streaks of dazzling sword chi continuously slashed at the incoming attacks. In an instant, Tianyang even managed to destroy a portion of the attack. However, under the attacks of the 3 great imperial emperors, Tianyang was still unable to withstand and was directly blasted flying. Blood spurted out from his mouth, and he wanted to escape. However, Emperor Wild Tiger's expression was cold as he sealed the space around him. Trying to escape? Emperor Wild Tiger grabbed at Tianyang and pulled him over. Your fate is to have your soul extracted by me and burned by the divine flames for countless years until your soul disappears. Emperor Wild Tiger said coldly. Tianyang gritted his teeth and prepared to forcefully sublimate his martial soul while his martial soul's power was weak. At this moment, a supreme aura appeared in the depths of the immortal empire. In an instant, it destroyed all the attacks and froze everyone in the air. Supreme God. Chapter 1757. Hierarch. Regardless of the cultivation level of the people present, before this terrifying pressure, they were instantly turned into powerless mortals. They were directly suppressed. Tianyang, who was being bombarded by the attacks of the Undying Emperor Court, took advantage of this opportunity to catch his breath. However, Tianyang's expression still changed. Even existences at the level of the 3 great imperial monarchs were easily crushed by this pressure. This was the power of a hierarch. Even though he didn't know how far away this aura was, it was still so powerful. Tianyang even felt that his primal chaos divine domain, which he thought was invincible, didn't even have the chance to be used in front of this hierarch's aura. Even when Emperor Tsangwu appeared during the battle with the snow goddess, Tianyang didn't feel as invincible as he did now. It was unfathomably powerful. Lord Hierarch. At this moment, the elders of the Undying Emperor Court had completely given up on attacking Tianyang. They retracted their divine energy and knelt down respectfully towards the depths of the Undying Emperor Court. The person who made this move was the Emperor of the Undying Emperor Court, one of the strongest supremes in the divine world. When the Emperor of the Undying Emperor Court appeared, no matter how powerful the 3 emperors were, they had to kneel down. It wasn't a requirement, but a natural fear of the strong. Even though there was only a difference of one realm between a hierarch and an emperor, the difference was like heaven and earth. The difference between the two was like the difference between clouds and mud. It was indescribable. A hierarch was a god at the peak of the sky dome. An emperor was at most a mortal on the ground. Below them, the expressions of the undying Emperor City's experts changed drastically. Some knelt down, some bowed. In an instant, only Tianyang was left standing on Sky Capital Peak. "What are you doing?" At this moment, Emperor Huang, who noticed Tianyang's actions, and roared, "You dare not kneel in front of a hierarch?" As for Heavenly Sun, he completely ignored Emperor Wild Tiger. In his eyes, Emperor Wild Tiger was just SOSO, and was not a threat at all. If he hadn't exhausted himself in the battle with the undying Emperor Court, Tianyang was confident that he wouldn't lose to Emperor Huang, who in a one-on-one battle. However, the one who appeared was a hierarch. Tianyang was in a strange state. It wasn't an epiphany, but it was extremely similar. His body was like a sponge, crazily absorbing the boundless mysteries of a hierarch. In Tianyang's eyes, it wasn't just a hierarch's, it was a true hierarch's boundless treasure. Boom! At this moment, Tianyang's sea of the Emperor Court. In the next moment, Tianyang spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying without warning. "You're a mere ant. Hierarch! Hierarch!" At this moment, his origin was heavily injured. Just like when he fought with the undying Emperor Court, Tianyang was only at the peak of the Heaven Great Sage realm. His origin was also heavily injured, and he couldn't even use blood rebirth. However, that was when a Saint Realm expert fought against a Deity Realm expert. Now, whether it was a Deity Realm expert or a hierarch, they were all using Hierarch's divine power. This hierarch had heavily injured Tianyang's origin with just a sentence. Hierarch made a move? Emperor Wild Tiger and the others, who were kneeling on the ground, were stunned when they saw Heavenly Sun suddenly vomiting blood and retreating. Hierarch was usually high and mighty and didn't involve himself in the affairs of the mortal world. Why did he make a move today without any explanation? At this moment, the undying Emperor Court's old voice sounded. Sinner Tianyang killed the Emperor Court's prince, created chaos in the undying Emperor Court, and destroyed the dignity of the undying Emperor Court. Simple, indifferent, and unquestionable. At this moment, boundless death energy swept towards Tianyang and enveloped Tianyang. The terrifying death energy crazily attacked Tianyang's body. Even Tianyang's primal chaos divine domain couldn't block the hierarch's absolute command. That's right, that sentence was the undying Emperor Court's order. Once the order was given, the heavenly Tao changed. Tianyang was sentenced to death. Then, Tianyang would die without a doubt. Boom! Streaks of golden undying fire burned, and the death energy around Tianyang was expelled by the undying fire. The expressions of Emperor Wild Tiger and the other emperors changed slightly when they saw this. What kind of fire was that? It could block the undying Emperor Court's absolute command. Undying fire? The old voice was surprised, but then he sneered again. This undying fire has already reached the hierarch realm. I don't think it's yours. How long can a mere strand of hierarch flame last? Then, the terrifying death energy fiercely attacked again. However, Tianyang gritted his teeth, and streaks of undying bloodline flames burned all over his body. The golden flames that were about to be extinguished also expanded greatly at this moment, pushing away the streams of death energy. Boom! The undying Emperor Court's absolute command snorted coldly, and the death energy instantly broke through the golden undying fire's restriction. It bombarded Tianyang's body. Tianyang spat out a mouthful of blood. His origin had already been damaged by the hierarch's absolute command, and now he was hit by the death energy again. At this moment, the undying fire on Tianyang's body was completely extinguished, and his body was surrounded by death energy. Emperor Huang Hu and the others couldn't help but take in a cold breath. Tianyang, who had blocked them for so long, had been reduced to such a state in just a second? The power of a hierarch was terrifying. Now I'll send you to hell. The undying Emperor Court's absolute command snorted coldly, and a palm print condensed in midair. In the next moment, the palm print fiercely bombarded Tianyang's body. Boom! Tianyang's body was completely destroyed. Because his origin was damaged, even his undying bloodline couldn't exert any power. Only his divine soul was left, and it was sent flying. Even this divine soul couldn't resist at all, and it was burned by the undying fire. As expected of the hierarch, Emperor Huang, who looked at the scene in front of him in shock. Tianyang was finally dead. However, Monarch Wild Tiger's face was filled with resentment. Even if Tianyang died, their undying prince wouldn't be able to come back to life. The undying prince was a peerless genius that only appeared once in 10 million years, and he died just like that. Boom! There was another loud bang. The undying fire on Tianyang's body burned crazily. Streaks of undying divine flames exploded, dyeing the entire sky black. Chapter 1758. The battle between Tianyang and the undying prince lasted for almost 2 days. The battle started early in the morning and ended on the night of the second day. He went to Tiandu Peak alone to fight the undying prince. He killed the undying prince with an absolute advantage. In the end, the undying emperor's men suddenly attacked, but they could not do anything to Tianyang. In the end, it was the undying emperor's master, a supreme godly venerable rank existence, who killed Tianyang. Although the final result was still the undying emperor's victory. However, the death of Tianyang and the undying prince was enough to leave an indelible mark in the hearts of the cultivators in the heavenly realm. "You're really dead?" Yi Chen changed his face again. He gritted his teeth as he watched the countless arrest warrants of Tianyang in the undying emperor city. Killing the undying prince, shocking the undying emperor, and even forcing the undying emperor's master, a godly venerable rank existence, to attack. This kind of result was glorious enough. Even if Yi Chen had imagined it to be more than 10 times, it would still be difficult to achieve this. That was the undying prince. Even if Yi Chen was extremely confident in his talent, he would not dare to say that he could exchange a single blow with someone of that level. The number one in the heavenly realm, dominating the world, was not a joke. The death of the undying prince was equivalent to the removal of the biggest threat to the Tian clan in the future. As for Tianyang, he was just a prodigy who came out of nowhere and had nothing to do with the Tian clan in the heavenly realm. In theory, Yi Chen had profited greatly this time. However, Yi Chen gritted his teeth. In his heart, he even had the urge to kill the undying emperor and directly attack the undying emperor's master. If only the strongest person in the Tian clan was a godly venerable rank. With a godly venerable rank, Tianyang wouldn't have died. Yi Chen's figure flashed and disappeared from the undying emperor city. Even if Tianyang was dead, there was no reason for the undying emperor city to be locked down. After all, Yi Chen had entered the undying emperor city with Tianyang. If Qian Zhongyuan revealed something, he would be in danger. Haoman. Boom. Great Elder Haoman could not control the true essence in his body and directly exploded. 4 days ago, when the Heavens Expanse Saint Spirit had left with the Heavens Expanse Shrine, Grand Elder Haoman had already known about it. However, there was no further news, so Haoman did not continue to pay attention to it. Now the news had arrived. To Haoman, this was incomparably bad news. Tianyang managed to kill the undying prince, but he was killed by the undying Emperor Palace's ruler, a god. Along the way, an Emperor artifact appeared and blocked a few attacks for Tianyang, but it disappeared in the end. Grand Elder Haoman naturally knew what this monarch artifact was. Heaven's Expanse Shrine. Second Elder. First Elder Haoman stood there for more than an hour before he roared angrily. Great Elder! Soon, the second Elder of Haoman appeared in front of the Great Elder. Seal the news immediately. Don't let anyone know. We only need to pay attention to the Lingfeng realm and the South Central Hundred Territories. We don't know what happened in the north. First Elder Hauman gritted his teeth and said. Tianyang was gone, and only Hauman was left. Hauman had already been severely injured once because of Tianyang's departure. It was not easy for him to recover. He could not let Tianyang's efforts go to waste. Yes, second Elder Hauman said. On the side, Gu Qing, who was Hauman's guardian, also stood there motionless. Archaic Jiang family. Tianyang is dead? Tianyang is dead? Ha 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 ha. Because of Tianyang, Jiang Xian's power had expanded and his own power had been suppressed. At this moment, the eldest young master of the Jiang family was in a state of ecstasy. Even though he had never met Tianyang, the eldest young master of the Jiang family hated Tianyang to the bone. It was because this person was most likely the important reason for the destruction of the snow goddess's bloodline. Therefore, the Jiang family patriarch valued the daughter who was close to Tianyang so much. The position of the Jiang family patriarch had never allowed a woman to interfere. However, because of this, the resources that were originally monopolized by him were all shared with Jiang Xian. In fact, Jiang Xian could even freely enter and exit the hidden scripture pavilion. She was even stronger than him. It would not be long before Jiang Xian could break through to the godly realm, and there would be even fewer elders supporting him. But now everything was over. Tianyang was dead, and the relationship that Jiang Xian built with Tianyang would also collapse. The position of the Jiang family patriarch will always be mine. Ha 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 ha. The battle between Tianyang and the Undying Prince had spread throughout the divine world. No one knew who Tianyang was, but almost all of the younger generation in the divine world knew the name of the Undying Prince. The Undying Emperor was a genius that appeared once in a million years. He had 9 dragons with 9 lines of supreme divine bloodline. He had sealed his cultivation for more than 100 years, and he was still able to step into the peak of late-stage godly realm at the age of 300. He was only one step away from becoming an imperial emperor. Ever since he was born, he had always been unstoppable and counterattacked. He had never been defeated. Yesterday was the only time he had been defeated. Also, it was his last defeat. The Undying Prince had fallen. Tianyang, who killed him, was also completely wiped out because of the Supreme God's intervention. 3 imperial emperors and more than 100 godly realm experts attacked together, but they still could not do anything to Tianyang. Only a supreme god could truly kill Tianyang. Such a battle record was enough to make a godly realm expert laugh in the underworld. I saw Tianyang disappear, but are you sure he's really dead? In the Undying Emperor City, the white-robed young man frowned and asked, Young lord, he was attacked by a supreme god for so long. He's already at the limit of a godly realm expert. After that, the Undying Emperor was enraged. How could he let Tianyang continue to live? The messenger said. However, the white-robed young man snorted when he heard this. Ask Heaven's Secrets has never relied on inference to confirm information. Moreover, if Tianyang is really, then there's no way he's dead. The white-robed young man spoke so softly that even the late-stage godly realm expert opposite him couldn't hear him clearly. All right then. If that's the case, Ask Heaven's Secrets will fall behind in terms of information. It doesn't matter. The white-robed young man pulled his hat and turned to leave. I believe he won't die. Then, an ethereal voice that didn't seem to belong to this world sounded. The calamity is coming, and he's the only one left. Maybe he's the last one. Cough, cough, cough. On a barren black land, a broken young man coughed a few times. His face was abnormally pale. Around him, a strange grayish-black aura surged, giving people an uncomfortable feeling. Then, Tianyang opened his eyes. Chapter 1759. Where is this place? Tianyang gritted his teeth and tried to sit up. However, the excruciating pain from his limbs almost caused Tianyang to collapse. The Supreme God's aura was still flowing in his body, but it was no longer life-threatening. However, Tianyang was still very confused. Why was he able to survive? Tianyang didn't think that he had any special ability to block the final attack of the Undying Emperor Palace Lord. If that attack hadn't landed on his body, it would have been impossible for him to block it. Not only the Undying Emperor City, but the entire Imperial Court realm and even half of the 1,000 territories in the north would have been destroyed. Could it be that Song Emperor's sword? Startled, Heavenly Sun hurriedly dived deep into his soul ocean. However, before he could check on that Song Emperor's sword, a middle-aged man's voice appeared in his mind. Long time no see, Junior from the immemorial ancient era. Instantly, Tianyang's body stiffened and his muscles tensed up. He was ready for battle. What are you afraid of? Then, the undying divine fire gathered in front of Tianyang and formed a translucent figure. He was about 2 meters tall and had a handsome face. However, compared to the undying emperor's inhuman handsomeness, he was still lacking. He wore a fitting black robe and had a gentle expression. He looked like an ordinary young man. However, Tianyang only took one look and immediately sensed the aura of the person in front of him. It was the undying divine fire that formed the body. Even the undying emperors, Emperor Tsongwu's, and the undying emperor's undying divine fire couldn't compare to it. If the heavens and earth perish, I will not perish. If the sun and moon decay, I will not perish. The black-robed young man smiled faintly. Do you still remember this? You are. Tianyang's eyes narrowed. This was the foundation of the undying divine body, the undying will. This person had actually mentioned the undying will in one go? It should be known that those who possessed the immortal bloodline would have to endure immense pressure to say these words, unless they had truly comprehended the immortal will. Tianyang had never seen this person before. Could he be from the Tian clan that Yi Chen was from? Was he the one who helped him? Forget it, I can't be bothered to keep you in suspense. I don't have much time anyway. The man smiled and waved his right hand. Tianyang's remnant godly venerable power disappeared in an instant. My name is Tianxian. Of course, you should be more familiar with my other title. Undying Heavenly Sovereign, the black-robed youth said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Tianyang, who had been calm all this while, fell into a complete daze. Undying Celestial Lord? The immortal bloodline progenitor of the immemorial era? An existence at the level of an immemorial emperor? This should be the last time I attack. If I continue to attack, even the old man Tsong Tian's Tsong Emperor sword will not be able to provide me with energy. However, the way that Tsong Heavenly Emperor's sword has chosen this time is somewhat special. The undying Heavenly Sovereign said with a smile. Heavenly Sun, on the other hand, was completely dazed by the sudden influx of information. Even after hearing these 2 sentences, he was unable to react for a moment. Unlike the Green Lotus Sword Immortal, I did not kill myself. Or rather, the way I killed myself is different from his. Right now, I'm living in the immortal will of every immortal bloodline. The undying Heavenly Sovereign said with a smile. You mastered the immortal will when you were in the ascending heaven stage. Therefore, I was able to help you when you were killed by the demon. However, I could only recover after consuming the power of the Tsong Heavenly Emperor sword. The attack earlier consumed a huge amount of power from the Emperor sword. Only then was I able to protect you and send you to this place. Therefore, I can no longer help you from now on. With that, the undying Heavenly Sovereign's body formed by the immortal divine fire gradually turned transparent. Seeing this, Tianyang's eyes narrowed. He did not care about the huge amount of information he had just asked and quickly asked. Why did you save me? Tianyang did not think that the undying Heavenly Sovereign would help him repeatedly because his surname was Tian. If that was the case, Emperor Tsongwu would not have died. Why? The immortal heavenly lord repeated himself, then smiled faintly. Because you are the one chosen by the Tsong heavenly emperor sword. At the same time, you have the shard of the fortune sword in your hand. Even if your talent is not as good as the other chosen ones, I believe that you can end all of this. What? Hearing this, Tianyang was stunned. Chosen by the Tsong heavenly emperor sword? Holding the shard of the fortune sword? He could understand the former, but what about the latter? How could he have the fortune sword in his hand? Of course, it's most likely for the sake of this world. Then, the undying heavenly sovereign's body dimmed completely. Don't worry. I'm just out of energy. I won't die before he dies. As for you, you have to be careful in this place. If it wasn't because I had no other choice, I wouldn't have sent you here. I've already given you what you wanted. Now, it's all up to you. The undying heavenly sovereign smiled. Then, his body disappeared completely, leaving behind a vague sentence. Remember, go and ask Tianji. The undying heavenly sovereign's aura disappeared completely. Tianyang, on the other hand, was stunned on the spot. Looking at the place where the undying heavenly sovereign used to be, he felt a little lost. He entered the Sea of Soul and sensed that the Tsong heavenly emperor sword's tip had dimmed. What I wanted. Then, Tianyang closed his eyes and sensed it. Suddenly, he was shocked beyond words. Cultivation. Peak of the God realm advanced stage. His spiritual energy had also reached this level. His physical body was the same. His essence, chi, and spirit had all reached the level closest to the Emperor realm. Of course, what shocked Tianyang the most was not the increase in his cultivation, but countless inheritances of the undying Emperor dynasty appeared in his mind, inexhaustible. This is the inheritance that Emperor Tsongwu wanted me to find? Suddenly, Tianyang felt that it was unreal. He had worked so hard for so long and was almost killed. How could these things be delivered to him so easily? However, Tianyang did not immediately sit down to adapt and refine the new cultivation and inheritance. Instead, he released his spiritual energy to check his surroundings. Then, his expression became a little strange. A grayish-black airflow flowed around Tianyang's broken body. Below his feet was the pitch-black earth, and above his head was the dark sky. The mountains were scarlet red, and the setting sun was like blood. This is the demonic world? Chapter 1760. This is the demonic realm? Tianyang was shocked as he sensed the surrounding environment. The surrounding demonic aura was surging, and the sky was dark. Even the demonic star that Tianyang had been to might not be comparable to this environment. The concentration of demonic aura here was equivalent to the concentration of heaven and earth spiritual chi in the divine realm. I've been beaten to the demonic realm? Tianyang was shocked. He thought that he had been beaten to some other great world. He didn't expect to come directly to the demonic realm. Since I'm in the demonic realm, I can't use Su Tianxiao's face. Tianyang muttered to himself. He didn't plan to change his appearance, and walked around with his original appearance. The people that Tianyang had offended were all from the human clan, the demon clan, and the demonic clan that he had offended were all killed. However, Su Tianxiao's face had seen many demonic clans on the demonic star and didn't kill all of them. Tianyang's original appearance was safer. But Tianyang let out a sigh of relief when he didn't find any living beings with his divine soul power. It would be bad if he was thrown into some dangerous place. Then, Tianyang sat cross-legged on the ground and circulated his divine power to recover his body as soon as possible and comprehend the immortal imperial court's inheritance in his mind. However, as soon as he circulated his divine power, Tianyang felt a piercing pain. His dantian was broken, and his meridians were almost destroyed. If it wasn't for the chaotic divine law, Tianyang's body wouldn't have survived. As an ultimate god, the immortal heavenly lord had cut himself off from the primordial age until now. he probably couldn't completely block the immortal Imperial Court's attack. Then let's comprehend the immortal Imperial Court's inheritance first. Tianyang circulated his divine power and ignited the immortal divine flame. Not only his dantian and meridians, but even Tianyang's immortal bloodline was broken. Fortunately, the immortal chaotic body had surpassed the immortal bloodline and the immortal divine body. It was built on the immortal divine body, but it belonged to Tianyang. It was the strongest divine body. Strands of chaotic qi was injected into the immortal divine flame. Suddenly, the immortal divine flame shone brightly and enveloped Tianyang's entire body. Tianyang's body quickly recovered. Tianyang's mind was immersed in comprehending the immortal Imperial Court's inheritance. The 3 styles immortal styles, the complete version? This is the strongest immortal Imperial Court's cultivation technique? It's profound. It's immortal Imperial Court cultivation, immortal Imperial Court's immortal bloodline. Immortal heavenly immortal realm. 2. Immortals. Immortal emperors, immortals earth, immortal emperor. And the immortal heavenly lord's method was even more brilliant. He directly entered Tianyang's soul sea. But now Tianyang could only decipher less than 1/10 of it. How to condense the source, how to control the divine Tao laws. No wonder the undying Emperor Court is still one of the strongest powers in the divine world, no matter how weak it is. This complete inheritance is a treasure that all cultivators would rather die for. Tianyang sighed. Ordinary cultivators would have to tread carefully in the fog before taking a step forward. From the Tao flame to the divine realm, one would fall into a bottomless abyss if they weren't careful. This inheritance was equivalent to unveiling the fog. It told you that you could break through to the divine realm by doing so. Of course, it still required talent and cultivation to support it. But if it was made public, the entire divine world's martial civilization would rise by more than a level. However, it wouldn't benefit the immortal Imperial Court. After sighing, Tianyang no longer hesitated and immersed himself in comprehending the immortal Imperial Court's inheritance. Tianyang started from the connecting heaven realm, and he had broken through to the divine realm. Fortunately, Tianyang had innately terminated meridians. As long as he found the right direction from the start, no matter how he cultivated, he wouldn't go astray. At most, he would go berserk in a small area. Thus, it was only a matter of strength. If it was a matter of right or wrong, it would be impossible to cultivate from the start. Although Tianyang's Tao foundation was stable and perfect, the details were still a little rough. The immortal Imperial Court's inheritance just so happened to make up for this flaw in Tianyang. The Emperor of the immortal Imperial Court and the 3 emperors would never have thought that after fighting so hard against Tianyang, they wouldn't die and the immortal Imperial Court's prince would be dead. And their most precious inheritance would be given away to someone else. If Tianyang was the Emperor of the immortal Imperial Court, he would have the heart to commit suicide right now. After cultivating for a few days, Tianyang had to stop because of his injuries. However, Tianyang had also benefited greatly from the past few days of cultivation. His cultivation had also climbed back to the peak. However, the divine sovereign's power in my body has been removed, but a part of my divine soul seems to be suppressed. Tianyang frowned. He could feel that his divine sovereign's power was at the peak of the late stage of the immortal Imperial Court, and he could step into the Imperial Emperor realm at any time. It was completely under his control. However, Tianyang couldn't completely unleash it. This was because the power left behind by the Emperor of the immortal Imperial Court in Tianyang's divine soul hadn't been completely removed. It was as if there was a huge crack in Tianyang's divine soul sea. As a result, the power that Tianyang could unleash now was about the same as before. However, with the increase in divine strength, this chaotic small world should have expanded a lot. Tianyang muttered to himself. When he had just broken through to the immortal realm, the chaotic small world had already reached 100,000 miles. Now, it had been directly channeled to the peak of the late stage of the immortal imperial court, and was only a step away from the peak of the immortal imperial court. This chaotic small world should also be much stronger. Out! With a thought from Tianyang, the primal chaos godly law emitted streaks of primal chaos light. In an instant, the extremely majestic world power erupted from Tianyang's body. Boom! In just an instant it expanded to a radius of 100,000 miles. However, Tianyang's expression didn't change, and the chaotic divine law continued to operate. 100,000 miles might be the limit for him at the early stage of the immortal realm. But now it was far from enough. However, the surroundings are filled with demonic chi, so I can only use the heavenly sword to expand it. Tianyang muttered to himself. The demonic world was filled with demonic chi, and the chaotic small world couldn't directly absorb the heaven and earth spiritual chi to the current limit like in the immortal realm. It could only be refined by himself and the heavenly sword, and then injected into the chaotic small world. Therefore, the expansion speed was much slower. 110,000 miles. 120,000 miles. 130,000 miles. 150,000 miles. As time passed, the chaotic small world's area had more than doubled compared to before. However, this was still not the limit. Tianyang's expression didn't change, and the heavenly sword's refinement had reached the limit. Boom! 200,000 miles. 200,000 miles, the chaotic small world. It had already exceeded the size of the northern wilderness region, and even the firmament territory had to admit defeat to it. It seems that this is the limit. Tianyang muttered to himself as he looked at the 200,000 miles of chaotic small world. The current chaotic small world's world power had reached an extremely terrifying level. Then, just as Tianyang was about to withdraw the heavenly sword, a cold shout suddenly sounded. Who is cultivating in my tribe's sacred ground? Chapter 1761. Who dares to cultivate in my clan's hallowed grounds? A furious shout resounded, and then a gale blew down from the sky. After that, a young man fell down from a huge demonic beast and landed heavily in front of Tianyang. Bang! Dust and sand were kicked up into the air. Hallowed grounds! Tianyang's eyes narrowed as he quickly captured the words, and his expression changed slightly. This place isn't a no-man's land but the hallowed grounds of the demon race? Humph! The area of 500,000 kilometers around Ocean of Cloud City is the territory of my Cloud Ocean sect. Who doesn't know that this is the hallowed grounds of my Cloud Ocean sect? The young man grunted coldly, and then the huge demonic beast he rode on descended slowly. It was an extremely huge demonic dragon. It wasn't really appropriate to call it a demonic dragon, because its limbs weren't very similar to those of the dragon race. There was a pair of pitch-black dragon wings on its back, and they seemed like they were burning with flames. As for its head, it was slightly different from what Tianyang knew about the dragon race. It was longer and more rugged. However, he looked similar to Dragon Emperor Xietian in his original form in the Xientian macro world. That's the dragon race of the demon dimension? Tianyang muttered to himself. Meanwhile, the young man's face fell when he saw Tianyang remain silent for a long time. Who are you? Why are you in the hallowed grounds of my Cloud Ocean sect? The young man shouted furiously, and then numerous strands of demonic energy rose up from him. An aura comparable to a peak demigod from the god dimension was released. I'm the eldest disciple of the Cloud Ocean sect, Su Qin. If you don't answer me, then don't blame me for attacking. The young man spoke coldly. As for Tianyang, he turned his attention from the demonic dragon to the young man. His overall appearance was exactly the same as a human's, and it was even to the extent that there was some evil energy that belonged to the demon race. It made the young man's appearance seem especially attractive. His cultivation was extremely ordinary, and it was only at the peak of the demigod realm. Of course, to the demon race, he was probably at the peak of the half-step demon-god realm. Tianyang had some understanding of the demon race's Tao of cultivation. Starting from demon sovereign, it was followed by demon sovereign, demon saint, demon sect, demon saint sect, half-step demon god, demon monarch. They corresponded to Wu Zun, saint realm, great sage, holy emperor, demigod, immortal realm, and imperial emperor. Tianyang sensed that this youth was not very old, but he had already reached the peak of the half-step demon-god realm. In the devil realm, he could be considered a decent genius. "You bastard!" Seeing that Tianyang was sizing him up unscrupulously, the young man was instantly enraged and charged forward. Thick demonic aura erupted from the young man's body. In the next moment it condensed on his fist. With unparalleled ferocity, he directly punched out. Devil-penetrating light-killing fist. Dazzling demonic light erupted from the young man's body and fused with the demonic chi that erupted from his fist. In an instant, his aura skyrocketed, and the power behind his punch actually surpassed what Tianyang had expected from a peak demigod. However, although he was a little surprised, Tianyang did not take this punch seriously. To say that he was strong, he was only strong in the demigod realm. In front of a divine realm expert, he was still trash. Bang! Tianyang directly attacked, activating the illusion demon ancient book. In an instant, the divine power released was simulated into demonic chi. He grabbed hold of the young man's fist and suppressed all the power of the punch. Is this the attitude that a half-step demon god should have towards a demon god? Tianyang's face was cold, and the demonic chi of the demon god realm surrounded him, as he said indifferently. This indifference seemed to be filled with endless killing intent. In an instant, the surrounding temperature dropped by a lot. The law of the jungle in the devil realm was even worse than in the divine realm. The gap in strength almost determined everything. This Yunhai sect disciple called Su Qin was, in fact, only a peak half-step demon god. In front of Tianyang's demon god realm, he was a weakling. His status was naturally very low. Demon god? Feeling this aura, Su Qin suddenly trembled. He looked in disbelief at Tianyang, who might be younger than him. He was so young, but he was already a demon god? Wasn't this a little too frightening? However, although Su Qin sighed in his heart, his expression instantly changed to one of respect. I don't know why Lord Demon God has come to the Holy Land of the Yunhai sect. This Holy Land is of great significance to the Yunhai sect. If you rashly disturb us, I'm afraid that the Yunhai sect will not let you go, Su Qin said. Hearing this, Tianyang coldly smiled. A majestic demonic chi burst out. Although the illusion demon ancient book in Tianyang's hand was only at the level of Wu Zun, Tianyang's soul power and the primal chaos divine law made Tianyang's imitation extremely exquisite. Unless it was a demon emperor, or even a demon emperor at the level of snow goddess, it was possible to see through Tianyang's disguise. Tianyang didn't think that there was such a demon emperor in the Yunhai sect. Is this your attitude when talking to a demon god? Tianyang's face was filled with evil intent. At the same time, the surrounding space also changed slightly. It distorted rapidly and squeezed down towards Su Qin. Suddenly, Su Qin's expression changed greatly. Although the demon race was generally capricious, they would still restrain themselves when dealing with their own kind. As a result, this demon god just exchanged a few words and was about to attack? Wait. Lord Demon God, wait! Su Qin hurriedly said, even if you don't know the Yunhai sect, you should have heard of the name of Demon King Yunhai. This holy land is prepared for the upcoming Demon King Yunhai. Su Qin hurriedly said. His voice was so fast that it was a little unclear. After all, standing in front of him was a demon god full of killing intent and a cruel temperament. If his explanation was a step too late, He was afraid that he would be squeezed by the surrounding distorted space and explode. Demon King Yunhai. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth curled up. If it's that Demon King Yunhai, I can spare your life, Tianyang sneered. In the demon world, Tianyang didn't know much. However, this Demon King Yunhai happened to be one of them. They besieged the Heaven's Expanse Emperor Lord together, causing him to have no choice but to split the Heaven's Expanse Temple and turn it into the main culprit. One of the 5 demon emperors. Tianyang waved his hand, and the space that was squeezing towards Su Qin instantly returned to its original state. Bang! Su Qin's body heavily smashed onto the ground, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Tianyang's cold voice followed. When Su Qin heard this, his expression suddenly changed. Bring me to see your Demon King Yunhai. Chapter 1762. Take me to see your Demon King Yunhai, Tianyang said coldly, and demonic energy raged around him. Hearing this, Su Qin's face changed. This demon god, after invading the holy land of the Yunhai sect, still dared to say that he wants to see their Demon King Yunhai? Could it be that he was seeking death? Tianyang's face remained unchanged, but the demonic energy around him raged even more. If it was in the divine world, Tianyang might have explained a few words, saying that he was old friends with Demon King Yunhai. But this is the demon world. The law of the jungle, the strong preying on the weak. The demon world has been interpreted to the extreme. If Su Qin dares to say no, then what Su Qin will face is endless death. Demon King Yunhai should still be in the sect. Su Qin trembled all over and stood up shakily. However, he had some confidence in his heart. Although the realm gap was too huge, Su Qin could only feel that the other party was a demon god from the pressure of the huge divine Tao. However, there are also strong and weak demon gods. Looking at the situation of the person in front of him, he was obviously not a powerful demon god. At most, he was an early-stage demon god. Facing Demon King Yunhai, there was only one word: death. Then lead the way, Tianyang said coldly. Su Qin also supported his body, which had suffered heavy injuries due to the space compression. He rose into the air and landed on the back of the demon dragon. Roar! The demon dragon roared, spread its wings, and rose into the air. Sitting on it, Su Qin's heart was full of resentment. When it was time to meet Demon Monarch Cloudsea, it will be the death of this arrogant demon god of unknown origin. The demon world was the same as the divine world. It was the largest fragment of the ancient continent that was shattered into the myriad worlds due to the great war of the gods and demons. Its area was not inferior to the divine world. However, unlike the divine world, there was only one race in the demon world: the demon race. All other races, including the human race, monster race, dragon race, and ghost race, were just vassals of the demon race in the demon world. As for the devil world, it didn't have the divine world's myriad realms. It only had a central devil land and the surrounding 4 devil nations. Each devil kingdom was larger than the 1,000 territories in the north controlled by the undying imperial court. Moreover, each devil kingdom had countless powers fighting against each other, but in the end, there was only one supreme sovereign. The 4 great devil kingdoms were the 4 great emperors, but in the central demon land, there were more than just emperors. Legend had it that the demon ancestor, who had led the demon race to become the overlord of all races in ancient times, had yet to fall. He was guarding the central demon land and protecting the unification of the demon world. This was what Tianyang concluded from the information recorded in the Inheritance of the Heaven's Expanse Shrine and the Undying Emperor's Palace. The 4 devil kingdoms were located in the north, south, east, and west respectively. In the center was the devil lands that were twice the size of the devil kingdoms. After experiencing so many worlds, Tianyang naturally saw the strength of the demon realm at a glance. In the divine world, there were countless forces fighting for themselves. There was basically no communication or alliance. However, in the devil world, there were connections between devil nations and devil lands. With such development, it was naturally faster than the divine world. After all, once they joined forces, it wasn't as simple as 1 + 1 = 2, but a multifold increase in strength. No wonder the demon race has the ability to go on an expedition every 10,000 years. Such a magnificent martial arts civilization can definitely support such a huge expedition. Tianyang muttered to himself in his heart. A few strands of worry flashed across his heart. If the devil world went all out to attack the divine world, would the divine world, which was fighting for itself, be able to withstand it? Moreover, Tianyang knew that most of the immemorial emperors had killed themselves, and there were no traces of them in the divine world. As for the devil world, it was said that there was still the immemorial demon ancestor. However, the distance between the devil world and the divine world is extremely far, and I was forced here by the supreme God. It's useless to worry about this. Tianyang sighed in his heart, and didn't continue to think about it. With his current cultivation, not to mention whether he could find the way back, even if he could, it would take him at least a year to return to the divine world. Before that, he had to establish a firm foothold in the demon world. Tianyang also learned about the location of the Yunhai sect through Su Qin's mouth. Coincidentally, it was in the central demon land in the north. It wasn't far from the legendary demon ancestor's heavenly demon pillar. Tianyang already had a plan. After dealing with Demon King Yunhai of the Yunhai sect, he would go to the heavenly demon pillar to take a look. At this time, the space around Tianyang changed slightly, and there were some spatial fluctuations. Su Qin, who was riding the demon dragon, also spoke at this moment. Just now, we were in the holy land of the Yunhai sect, but now, we have officially entered the demon world. This time, Demon King Yunhai seems to have come for some treasure in the Holy Land, so he came to this small Yunhai sect with the identity of the Demon King. Su Qin said. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. In the Holy Land, apart from the blood-red mountain range and the Dark Land, there was only demonic qi. What kind of treasure was hidden? However, Su Qin only said this sentence and then closed his mouth. Seeing the slight change in Tianyang's expression, Su Qin sneered in his heart. It's good that you're interested. If you're interested, you'll have a conflict with Demon King Yunhai. In front of Demon King Yunhai, you can't even block for a moment, you'll die without a doubt. At this time, Su Qin, who thought that he had framed Qing Gong, suddenly changed his expression. Tianyang had already sensed a powerful aura from afar, and his expression changed slightly. This aura was stronger than the aura left by the Heaven's Expanse Emperor in the Heaven's Expanse Shrine, but it was weaker than the Snow Goddess. However, it was obvious that it was in the Emperor realm. In other words, it was a Demon King. A Chi cultivator had appeared in the vicinity of the Yunhai sect. His identity was obvious. It seems that we've bumped into Demon King Yunhai on his way to the Holy Land. Su Qin now saw the face of the owner of the powerful aura clearly, and he was pleasantly surprised. Demon God, didn't you say that you wanted to discuss the treasure of the Holy Land with Demon King Yunhai? The Demon King in front is Demon King Yunhai. Su Qin hurriedly turned his head and said to Tianyang, who had been flying beside him. However, when he turned his head, he didn't see Tianyang's figure, which made Su Qin a little surprised. At this time, a clear voice sounded. Your Demon King Yunhai? Hearing this, Demon King Yunhai, who was flying quickly, was stunned. There was actually someone in the Yunhai sect who dared to call him by his name? Then, Demon King Yunhai saw Tianyang's face clearly. It was completely unfamiliar. Back then, I joined forces with the other 4 Demon Kings to kill the Heaven's Expanse Emperor. Why is it that after so many years, you're still the same as the Heaven's Expanse Emperor? The corner of Tianyang's mouth curled up as he mocked. You! Hearing this, Demon King Yunhai's face instantly darkened. Do you know, at this time, A sword light that contained the chaos divine law fell from the sky. In an instant, Demon King Yunhai's body was split into two by this sword light. Demon blood splattered everywhere. Chapter 1763. The sword light slashed down like a star. In just an instant, the sword light sliced Demon Monarch Cloud Sea into two halves from top to bottom with an unstoppable force. Demon blood splattered everywhere. At this moment there were two demons. One was Su Qin, the eldest disciple of Yunhai sect who saw Demon King Yunhai being cut in half. The other was the main character who was cut in half, Demon King Yunhai. How dare you! Even though he was cut in half, Demon King Yunhai did not suffer much damage. Instead, he roared in anger. The surrounding heaven and earth were occupied by the terrifying demonic aura. What followed was Cloud Sea Demon Monarch's furious roar. Die! Ash Cloud Sea Seal. The demonic chi condensed and followed a strange trajectory to form a complicated seal. It released a billowing murderous aura and shot towards Tianyang at lightning speed. Not to mention Demon King Yunhai's anger from being cut in half, Tianyang's mockery of the Heaven's Expanse Emperor was enough to make Demon King Yunhai furious. In that battle, he, a noble demon, was no match for the lowly human emperor who was like an ant in his eyes. He even had to call for 4 helpers to kill the Heaven's Expanse Emperor. Even though he won in the end, Demon King Yunhai did not see it as glory. Instead, he saw it as a great humiliation. So many years had passed and he had almost forgotten about it. However, now that it was brought up again, Demon King Yunhai's anger was ignited. Die! Demon King Yunhai roared and formed another seal with his hands. In just a few seconds, the Tsangyun Sea transformation seal was condensed again. One after the other, the two overlapped and instantly exploded with a stronger power than before. However, Tianyang's expression did not change. He waved his right hand and the great void sword embryo appeared in his hand. He slashed with it easily. Even Tianyang could not unleash the full power of a late-stage god because of the remnant power of the undead emperor in his soul sea. However, it was enough to deal with a demon king. Heaven Opening Sword Technique. Tianyang said calmly as his chaos divine power exploded to the maximum. The great void sword embryo released a chaotic sword that looked like the beginning of the world. Even if the 2 seals of the Ash Cloud Sea transforming seal were superimposed, their might far exceeded that of a single seal. However, they were still unable to block the primal chaos heaven splitting sword. Crushing, that was crushing. When Tianyang was at the peak of the early stage god realm, he could rely on the 50,000-kilometer chaos small world to fight with an imperial emperor. Moreover, Tianyang's cultivation had reached the peak of the late stage of the god realm, and his chaotic small world had expanded to a radius of 200,000 miles. Any one of them would be able to beat up Demon Monarch Cloud Sea. Not to mention, the Heaven Opening Sword technique was a fusion of the two. Boom! The dazzling sword light shone in all directions. In front of the Heaven Opening Sword art, the Ash Cloud Sea transforming seal was completely unable to resist at all and was directly destroyed. Even Demon Monarch Cloud Sea was sliced into countless pieces by the sword. Spiritual Sea. However, at this moment, Demon Monarch Cloud Sea let out a furious roar. Countless pieces of his body turned into the purest demonic chi at this moment, forming a sea of demonic chi in midair. Clearly, Tianyang did not expect Demon Monarch Cloud Sea to have such a technique. The Heaven Opening Sword technique did not have time to change its form and directly pierced through the sea of demonic chi. Although close to 1/3 of the demonic chi in the sea of demonic chi was sliced into nothingness, it was still a far cry from the instant kill that Tianyang had expected. This is the technique that made Demon Monarch Cloud Sea famous, transforming his body into a sea of demonic chi. When Su Qin saw this, he immediately waved his fist excitedly, completely forgetting that Demon Monarch Cloud Sea was being beaten up by Tianyang. There's something. Tianyang looked at the sea of demonic chi that demon monarch Cloud Sea had turned into and said in surprise. The techniques of the demon race were indeed a little strange. In the realm of the gods, Tianyang had never seen anyone who could completely transform their body into divine power. Who exactly are you? In the sea of demonic chi, demon monarch Cloud Sea's resentful voice suddenly rang out. He was on his way to his own sex's sacred ground to obtain treasures, but halfway through, a completely unknown person suddenly appeared. After ridiculing him, he crippled him? Who did he offend? Tianyang had just opened his mouth when he thought for a while and said, Undying Emperor's son. The Undying Emperor's son had just turned into ashes, so he should not have the time to find trouble with him. Tianyang walked around in the demon realm, or rather, he was a tyrant. Of course, he had to give himself a famous name to take the blame for himself. His name was quite famous in the realm of the gods, but it clearly had not spread to the demon realm. Undying Emperor's son? Hearing this, not only did the sea of demonic chi that demon monarch Cloud Sea had turned into trembled violently, even Su Qin's expression changed greatly. Isn't that the genius of the Undying Emperor's son? He actually came to the demon realm? If I can kill the Undying Emperor's son, it will definitely be a huge blow to the realm of the gods. Su Qin was extremely excited. Then, he instantly made up his mind and rode the demonic dragon under him towards Tianyang. If he could kill the Undying Emperor's son, this merit would be enough to let him get rid of his status as a disciple and directly become an important figure in the Yunhai sect. However, Tianyang snapped his fingers and a wall of fire formed by the undying flame appeared in front of Su Qin. Su Qin crashed head-on into the undying divine flame. In an instant, he turned into ashes and disappeared. The Undying Emperor's son actually came to the demon realm? Demon monarch Cloud Sea did not care that his eldest disciple had turned into ashes. Instead, he directly controlled his sea of demonic chi and charged towards Tianyang. The monstrous demonic chi was like a real endless sea, setting off layers of demonic chi waves. Boom! In an instant Tianyang was swallowed up. However, at this moment, Tianyang's lips curled into a smile. The Undying Emperor's name is really useful. Come, eat to your heart's content. Then, a pure white long sword appeared in front of Tianyang. In the next moment, a devouring power that was enough to scare demon monarch Cloud Sea out of his wits erupted from the heavenly sword. Boom! In an instant, demon monarch Cloud Sea lost control of his demonic chi. Countless demonic chi was completely out of control and surged towards the heavenly sword. The heavenly sword released streaks of 9-colored xinguang that quickly devoured demon monarch Cloud Sea's demonic chi. In Tianyang's senses, the heavenly sword's grade was also rapidly increasing. What have you done? Demon monarch Cloud Sea's tone changed as he roared crazily. The sea of demonic chi that his body had turned into also used all its strength to try and escape. However, the more the heavenly sword devoured, the stronger it became. The devouring power naturally became stronger as well. With demon monarch Cloud Sea's remaining demonic chi, there was no way he could escape from Tianyang's grasp. Boom! With a final loud sound, the heavenly sword directly devoured the last bit of demon monarch Cloud Sea's demonic chi. Tianyang also reached out with his hand. Streaks of true flames of destruction turned into a small bottle and stuffed demon monarch Cloud Sea into it. Someone gave me such a big gift when I just arrived in the demon realm. The people of the demon realm are really hospitable. Looking at demon monarch Cloud Sea who was madly struggling in the bottle of true flames of destruction, Tianyang laughed. Chapter 1764. What did you do? Within the small bottle formed by the true flames of destruction, demon monarch Cloud Sea roared madly. It had only been a few seconds. The demonic chi that he had cultivated for tens of millions of years had been completely devoured, leaving nothing behind. Originally, this move was the ultimate move that Devil Monarch Cloud Sea relied on to become famous. His body would transform into a sea of demonic aura, greatly reducing the effectiveness of the enemy's attack. Furthermore, Devil Monarch Cloud Sea would enter a state where he could attack or retreat at will. It could be said that he was invincible. Who would have thought that they would meet a freak like the Undying Prince? Could it be that there's already a technique in the firmament that can devour demonic aura? Demon Monarch Cloud Sea seemed to have thought of something extremely terrifying as his voice began to tremble. If this was the case, it would be a huge blow to the Devil world if all of the Undying Imperial Court cultivated this technique. What about the other 4 demon monarchs? Tianyang, on the other hand, completely ignored Demon Monarch Cloud Sea. He couldn't be bothered to change into the Undying Prince's face. It wouldn't take long for people to find out that he wasn't the Undying Prince. Before that, Tianyang naturally wanted to let Heavenly Firmament Sword eat its fill. Compared to sitting and cultivating and devouring the Devil Chi in the Devil world, it was obviously faster to directly devour the Devil Chi of a powerhouse. Devil Monarch Cloud Sea's Devil Chi alone had caused the Sky Firmament Sword to faintly show signs of breaking through to mid-grade divine rank. If he could devour all of the demonic Chi from the 4 demon monarchs who had besieged the Heaven's Expanse Monarch, the Sky Firmament Sword might be able to break through to the high-grade divine rank. Tianyang had a feeling that if the Sky Firmament Sword broke through to the ultimate god level, it might cause some strange phenomenon. The other 4 demon monarchs? Hearing this, Demon Monarch Cloud Sea's expression changed slightly. You actually want to find them? Even if you have some strange method to devour our demonic Chi, don't think that it will work on them. I'm the weakest among the 5 demon monarchs. If you meet someone like Taotai Demon Monarch, you'll definitely die. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea hooted, while Tianyang frowned slightly. The bottle formed by the true flames of destruction shrank a little. Although the true flames of destruction were still at the level of divine fire, the power that the true flames of destruction could unleash was not weak at all with the support of Tianyang's majestic divine power. Just roasting Devil Monarch Cloud Sea's soul was enough to cause him unbearable pain. So much nonsense. Where are you? Tianyang said coldly. He did not have the slightest favorable impression of the fiend race. In his previous life, Tianyang had killed most of the demon race's expeditionary forces. Similarly, it was the demon race's expeditionary army that had injured Tianyang the most. The hatred between the two was enough for Tianyang to treat the demons without any feelings. Demon Monarch Luoyen is in the south of the central demonic land, Demon Monarch Taotai is around the heavenly demonic pillar, and the other 2 demon monarchs are elusive. I don't know where they are. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea roared, while Tianyang raised his eyebrows. Scattered? Looks like we won't be able to catch them all in one go. Forget it. Previously, the disciple of the Yun Hai sect said that there was a secret treasure in the holy land of the Yun Hai sect that was worth your attention. Tianyang raised his eyebrows, puzzled. Previously, he had used his divine sense to scan the holy land of the Yun Hai sect. Other than the abundant demonic Chi, there was nothing special about it. Moreover, because of the scarlet soil, not even a blade of grass grew. It was completely unsuitable to be a place for cultivation. Tianyang was somewhat puzzled as to why such a place was respected as a holy land of the Yun Hai sect with a demon monarch. Could it be that there was a secret treasure hidden here? You want to take the boundary stone of the Yun Hai sect? Hearing this, Demon Monarch Cloudsea's face suddenly changed. His voice, which was originally filled with fear, suddenly became firm. The boundary stone of the Yun Hai sect belongs to the demon race. Even if you are the strongest genius of the divine world and can defeat me, don't even think about touching it. The Cloud Sea boundary steel is an immemorial secret treasure. If someone who isn't a demon tries to touch it, they'll definitely suffer a backlash and die. Demon King Yun Hai said coldly. However, Tianyang did not take it to heart. With a flick of his finger, the small bottle formed by the true flames of destruction shrank again. Ah! The burning of the soul was not as painful as the physical pain. No matter how strong the physical pain was, it was only a physical stimulation. As for the burning of the soul, it was an intense pain that came from the depths of the soul. I don't have time for nonsense, Tianyang said indifferently. Against Demon Monarch Cloud Sea, Tianyang would not show any mercy. Tianyang was determined to kill Demon Lord Yunhai for the sake of the Heaven's Expanse Emperor, not to mention his hatred towards the demon clan. Right now, he was just trying to squeeze out the last bit of value before killing Cloud Sea Devil Monarch. I'll talk. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea gritted his teeth. He thought of the fate of those who touched the Cloud Sea boundary steel and could not wait to speak. The Cloud Sea boundary steel is below the Holy Land of the Cloud Sea sect. However, it requires a Demon King level demonic chi to open it. With your strength, I'm afraid you can't even get close to the Cloud Sea boundary steel, so, the Demon King level demonic chi you want. Tianyang waved his hand, and the demonic chi that he had not had time to devour burst out. Even though Demon Monarch Cloud Sea had already surrendered to Tianyang, the demonic chi was still extremely violent and aggressive. However, under the suppression of the primal chaos godly law, this demonic chi could not make any wave. Alright. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea was silent for a while, but he still spoke. Holy Land of the Cloud Sea sect. Because Su Qin was killed by Tianyang's undying flame wall, the Cloud Sea sect still did not realize that their first disciple had fallen and that their supreme emperor had become a prisoner. Tianyang easily crossed the array barrier that the Cloud Sea sect had set up for the Holy Land and arrived at the location of the Cloud Sea boundary steel that Demon Monarch Cloud Sea had mentioned. This is an immemorial relic? Tianyang looked at the array barrier in front of him that was filled with an immemorial relic and raised his eyebrows slightly. Could it be that the immemorial relic of the demon world was everywhere? This Cloud Sea boundary steel was not only an immemorial relic, but the array barrier around it was also an immemorial array barrier? It's because I found the Cloud Sea boundary steel here that I established the Cloud Sea sect here. It's just to protect the Holy Land and prevent the Cloud Sea boundary steel from being discovered by other demon kings. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea said. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly and looked at the Cloud Sea boundary steel in the translucent array barrier. It was pitch black and deep. Although it was separated by an array barrier, Tianyang could still feel the powerful aura on the Cloud Sea boundary steel. It was 3 feet long and wide, and was engraved with strange immemorial demonic runes. Before Tianyang made a move, he glanced at the immemorial demonic runes. In an instant, a terrifying divine soul attack erupted from the Cloud Sea boundary steel. Chapter 1765. A terrifying divine soul attack instantly erupted from the Cloud Sea boundary steel. Even though Tianyang's cultivation had reached the peak of the late stage of the God realm, he could not react in time. The divine soul attack hit him right between his eyebrows. Boom! In an instant, a terrifying storm of divine soul power swept across the land within hundreds of miles around Tianyang. Even space was torn apart by this tyrannical divine soul attack. Inside the bottle of true flames of destruction in Tianyang's hand, Demon Monarch Cloud Sea trembled. He revealed a look of excitement. Ha 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 ha. I knew that a treasure like the Cloud Sea boundary marker would never fall into the hands of a human from the divine realm. Just the anger of the Cloud Sea boundary marker is enough to flatten everything, let alone the undying prince. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea laughed maniacally. At this moment, the bottle of true flames of destruction in Tianyang's hand could not be maintained any longer. Because of the sudden divine soul attack from the Cloud Sea boundary marker, Tianyang had to withdraw all of his divine soul power in an instant. Just to block this attack. Therefore, without divine soul power to maintain the true flames of destruction, demon monarch Cloud C only needed to use a little demonic chi to collide with the bottle. It was enough to break the bottle of true flames of destruction. However, demon monarch Cloud C was not in a hurry to escape. The Cloud C boundary marker was an immemorial treasure that even a demon monarch of his level could not break. Since the Undying Prince had provoked the wrath of the Cloud C boundary marker, it was impossible for him to survive. Even if he was lucky enough to survive, it was impossible for him to be unharmed. Demon Monarch Cloud C knew that if this person from the divine realm could survive, even if his demonic soul escaped, he might not be able to completely escape from Tianyang's grasp. Therefore, Demon Monarch Cloud C had a bold idea. While Tianyang's divine soul was attacked by the Cloud C boundary marker and his defense was at its weakest, he made his move. Take over Tianyang's body. Boom. The same loud sound also appeared in Tianyang's soul C. The Cloud C boundary steel was indeed an immemorial treasure of the demon realm. This soul attack was extremely penetrative and easily penetrated the soul defense Tianyang had instantly condensed. It went straight into Tianyang's soul C. However, at this moment, the tip of the Tsang Emperor sword, which had been resting peacefully in Tianyang's soul ocean, suddenly moved. When Tianyang had fought the Undying Prince, he had been able to defeat the Undying Prince because he had comprehended the primal chaos divine dominion. Hence, the Tsang Emperor sword had not been able to attack. Later on, even if the Tsang Emperor sword appeared, it would not be able to withstand the attacks of ultimate gods. Therefore, the tip of the Tsang Emperor's sword had not been used for many years. But now, someone actually dared to invade Tianyang's soul C. Boom! Rays of dazzling golden light burst out from the tip of the Tsang Emperor's sword. In the next moment, the tip of the Emperor's sword directly pierced through the spiritual impact released by the Cloud C boundary stone. Seeing this, Tianyang heaved a sigh of relief. He hadn't forgotten that there was still a huge flaw in his spirit C. It was the ultimate god power left behind by the Undying Emperor. If the spiritual impact touched the ultimate god power, Tianyang would be in danger even if his spiritual impact was not ordinary. However, the moment the tip of the Tsang Emperor's sword pierced through the spiritual impact, in the outside world, on the pitch-black Cloud C boundary stone, in an instant, rays of extremely dark black light burst out. Boom! The black light seemed to have materialized and violently bombarded the space between Tianyang's eyebrows. What? Seeing this, Demon King Yunhai, who was waiting outside to possess Tianyang, was shocked. The Cloud C boundary stone actually had a second attack? When he had first discovered the existence of this treasure, there had been no such phenomenon. In his soul C, Tianyang was also shocked. The demonic light that had been pierced through by the tip of the Tsang Emperor sword and was about to be completely destroyed suddenly exploded again. At this moment, even the Tsang Emperor sword could not extinguish it instantly. Rays of demonic power were released from it. However, Tianyang did not wait for death. He snorted coldly and rays of true flames of destruction ignited in his soul C. At the same time, it merged with the undying divine fire and released an extremely powerful and terrifying force. In an instant, this force collided with the demonic light. Then, there was a loud bang. In an instant, an extremely majestic demonic aura exploded in Tianyang's soul C and swept in all directions. Seeing this, Tianyang's face suddenly changed. If he was in his peak state, after being weakened by the Tsang Emperor's sword and the true flames of destruction and the undying divine fire, Tianyang would not have cared at all. He could even let the Tianshao sword directly devour the demonic aura. However, there was a huge crack in Tianyang's soul C now. If the demonic aura invaded the crack and merged with the master of the Undying Empire's supreme god power, it would cause a chain reaction. Even Tianyang did not know what would happen. However, one thing was for sure. It was definitely not something good. Boom! However, at this moment, the tip of the Tsang Emperor's sword moved again. The Supreme Sword Principal Aura exploded from the Tsang Emperor's sword. In an instant, it broke through the demonic aura's seal on the Tsang Emperor's sword. Then, it swept through Tianyang's soul like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. All the demonic aura disappeared. This is the power of the Tsang Emperor's sword? Seeing this, Tianyang's pupils shrank. He was extremely shocked. When he first attacked, he almost destroyed the first spiritual attack of the boundary stone of the Cloud Sea. When the boundary stone of the Cloud Sea attacked again, he attacked again. This time, it was even more powerful. The sword light was vast and mighty. In an instant, it shattered all the demonic aura. How did it get into the heavenly sword? At this moment, Tianyang also noticed that after the demonic aura was shattered by the Tsang Emperor's sword, it did not turn into nothingness. Instead, it flowed into the Skycloud's sword through some unknown means. Originally, Tianyang felt that it was a pity that such a powerful demonic aura was wasted. Now, he no longer had such thoughts. However, the secret of the Cloud Sea boundary stone is not small. After the heavenly sword absorbed all the demonic aura, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. This was because after the Tsang Emperor sword's tip had shattered the demonic aura of the Cloud Sea boundary stone twice in a row, although it did not suffer any damage, its light had dimmed significantly. If an ordinary demonic aura attacked, the Tsang Emperor's sword would not even budge. This time, when the demonic aura invaded, the Tsang Emperor's sword acted. Tianyang couldn't help but feel suspicious. At this moment, crack, boom. In front of Tianyang, the protective array around the Cloud Sea boundary stone suddenly collapsed. Chapter 1766. Tianyang was shocked when he saw the protective array suddenly shatter. He had only withstood 2 waves of attacks from the boundary marker. How did the protective array shatter on its own? Then, Tianyang's consciousness left the Sea of Soul and returned to his physical body. At this moment, Demon Monarch Cloud Sea gritted his teeth and prepared to possess Tianyang immediately. Tianyang's body was extremely strong. It might even be stronger than Demon Monarch Cloud Sea's original body. If he could successfully possess Tianyang, Demon Monarch Cloud Sea's stagnant cultivation might even reach a higher level. However, at this moment, Tianyang's eyes suddenly lit up. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea, who was about to break through the bottle of true flames of destruction to possess Tianyang, was so frightened that he immediately retreated. "You're actually alive?" Demon Monarch Cloud Sea exclaimed in shock. This heavenly son had been in this state for several hours without waking up. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea was almost certain that Tianyang's soul had been shattered by the boundary marker's 2 waves of attack. In the end, he was just about to make a move and this guy came back to life? Why did I die? Tianyang was naturally able to tell what Demon King Yun Hai was thinking when he saw the horrified expression on the latter's face. He smiled and said, he never thought that Demon Monarch Cloud Sea would obediently obey him after being instantly killed by him. According to Demon Monarch Cloud Sea's thoughts, he should have been dead for sure after being attacked by the boundary marker's 2 waves of soul. Now, he either hadn't made a move yet or had just made a move. It was impossible for him to obediently stay in the bottle of true flames of destruction. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea's weak demonic soul suddenly trembled. He didn't have a trace of demonic energy left. In front of Tianyang, he had no power to fight back. It could be said that with a thought from Tianyang, his soul would scatter and he would be deader than dead. How long has it been? Tianyang's gaze never left the Cloud Sea boundary stone, which was now completely exposed to the air without the protection of the array, as he asked. 6 hours. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea said. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. 6 hours? In Tianyang's impression, it had only been a few minutes since the Tsang Emperor's sword had attacked for the first time and completely destroyed the demonic energy for the second time. It had already been 6 hours? It seems that the Cloud Sea boundary steel is extraordinary. Tianyang pondered for a moment and muttered to himself. Then, he circulated his divine energy and transformed it into an invisible giant hand that grabbed the Cloud Sea boundary steel. Bang! As soon as the giant hand touched the Cloud Sea boundary steel, demonic energy erupted from the surface of the Cloud Sea boundary steel and corroded Tianyang's giant hand. In fact, the demonic chi was rapidly spreading toward the heavenly sun body through the giant divine power hand. Seeing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and immediately dispersed the giant hand. The ball of demonic energy had lost its carrier. Even so, it still gathered in midair and charged toward Tianyang. However, this ball of demonic energy was completely different from the previous attack on the godly spirit. Tianyang waved his hand and destroyed the ball of demonic energy. However, he had some guesses in his mind. The Cloud Sea boundary marker seems to automatically attack when it encounters divine energy. Then, what about the chaotic energy? Then, Tianyang attacked again and unleashed the chaotic divine law. The giant hand that was completely condensed from the chaotic force reached out again. Don't even think about it. The Cloud Sea boundary marker is the treasure of my tribe. How could it fall into the hands of someone from the realm of the gods? Demon monarch Cloud Sea could not help but mock him. After failing once or twice, he still dared to touch the Cloud Sea boundary marker for the third time. Was he not afraid that the primordial demonic energy in the Cloud Sea boundary marker would explode and kill him? However, this time, the giant hand formed by the chaotic energy touched the Cloud Sea boundary marker again. The Cloud Sea boundary marker did not release any demonic energy. Instead, it was like a huge rock that was extremely quiet. Furthermore, the demonic energy that was released from the Cloud Sea boundary marker from time to time retreated the moment it came into contact with the chaotic energy. It was as if it was facing an existence that was far more powerful than itself. As expected. Seeing this, Tianyang smiled slightly. In his impression, the chaotic energy seemed to be of a higher level than divine energy. Against divine energy, there was a natural suppressive force. However, under normal circumstances, this suppressive force was not considered strong because Tianyang's divine energy was neutralized by Tianyang's divine energy. It was not of much help to Tianyang in battle. However, against the Cloud Sea boundary marker, this suppressive force showed how powerful it was. The Cloud Sea boundary marker was suppressed to the point that it could not even release demonic energy. How could it attack? Then, Tianyang exerted a little force and the chaotic energy lifted the Cloud Sea boundary marker easily. Unlike the Cloud Sea boundary marker that looked like stone and metal, it looked extremely heavy. When Tianyang lifted it, he realized that the Cloud Sea boundary marker was extremely light. It was as if it did not have a physical body and was purely formed by the demonic energy. You, a person from the realm of the gods, actually lifted the Cloud Sea boundary marker? Seeing Tianyang lift the Cloud Sea boundary marker in front of him so easily, Demon King Yunhai's expression suddenly looked as if he had seen a ghost. He did not have complete confidence in his attempt this time. After all, the Cloud Sea boundary marker was an immemorial secret treasure. Even Demon King Yunhai, a demon expert, could not do it. How could Tianyang, a mere deity from the realm of the gods, take it away? Now, not only did he take it away, it seemed like he was going to pack it up and take it away. How did you do it? Demon King Yunhai was shocked. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled slightly. Now, tell me, what is this Cloud Sea boundary marker? Immemorial secret treasures were not cabbages that could be found by the roadside. Even if the Cloud Sea sect was in the central Devil Land, it was not enough to be a reason. The Cloud Sea boundary steel was definitely a crucial item. Otherwise, it would not be possible to leave a protective formation that could be used since the immemorial era. Demon King Yunhai wanted to be tough at first, but in the end, under the threat of Tianyang's destruction true flames, he had no choice but to speak. And the details of the Cloud Sea boundary marker were completely revealed by Demon King Yunhai. The Cloud Sea boundary marker, Cloud Sea, was created by Demon King Yunhai. It did not have much meaning. But the two words, boundary marker, had a special meaning. In the immemorial era, the power of the demon clan was far from expanding to the point where they could monopolize an entire great world that was comparable to the realm of the gods. The central devil land was far from that size. The Cloud Sea boundary marker marked the boundary of the central devil land. In times of crisis, it would become a fragment of an ultimate god treasure that protected the central devil land. If this ultimate god treasure was collected, even a mortal would be able to erupt with ultimate god strength. Now, although it was a fragment, it was still closely related to the most mysterious secret territory of the demon realm, the heavenly demon pillar. I see. Tianyang nodded and threw the Cloud Sea boundary marker into the chaotic small world. At this time, just as Tianyang was about to leave the holy land of the Cloud Sea sect, 3 angry roars suddenly came from the horizon. Who dares to kill my brother, Demon King Yunhai? End of chapter. Chapter 1767. Who dares to kill my brother, Demon King Cloud Sea? 3 equally loud roars came from afar. In the next moment, 3 Demon King auras that were stronger than Demon King Cloud Seas came crashing down on Tianyang. Ha ha ha. You didn't expect this, did you? I called my brothers over during those 6 hours. At this moment, Demon King Cloud Sea, who was imprisoned by Tianyang in the bottle of true flames of destruction, laughed maniacally when he heard the 3 roars. It's not surprising that you can kill me alone. After all, I'm the weakest among the 5 of us. But this time, Big Brother, Second Brother, and Fourth Brother are here. I thought only Big Brother and Fourth Brother would come. Who knew that Second Brother would come too? Demon King Cloud Sea laughed out loud. At this moment, 3 demon lights flashed in front of Tianyang. Then, 3 figures appeared in front of Tianyang. Big Brother Demon King Taotai. Second Brother Demon King Bichuan. Fourth Brother Demon King Luoyen. You're at most at Second Brother's level. Now that the 3 of us are attacking together, you're dead for sure. Demon King Cloud Sea laughed out loud. Tianyang frowned slightly when he heard that. He could sense that the 3 people in front of him were similar to the 3 monarchs of the Undying Emperor Hall who had attacked him back then. The strongest demon King Taotai seemed to be even stronger than Emperor Raging Tiger. You're the one who killed my 5th brother? The leader was dressed in a long black robe. His face was grave and stern as he looked at Heavenly Sunday. The 5 demon kings had dominated the central demonic land for tens of millions of years. No one had dared to provoke them. If they were to join forces, they might even become one of the strongest forces in the central demonic land. However, even if they didn't join forces, they were still a force to be reckoned with in the central demonic land. Today, a guy who came out of nowhere actually killed Demon King Cloud Sea's physical body? He was courting death. If it weren't for the fact that Third Brother was exploring the mystic realm, he would have killed you instantly. On the other side, a man who was burning with dark red flames said, "He must be Demon King Luoyen. As for the one in the middle, it should be the Bichuan Devil King." Looking at Tianyang's young face, Demon Monarch Bichuan, whose face was covered by a black mask, suddenly let out a strange cackle. I heard from Yunhai that this guy is the Undying Prince of the Divine World's Undying Emperor Court? The strongest genius in the God realm? If I can kill him, not only will I get the treasures on him, but the rewards from the Devil Nation and the Devil Earth will also be great. Demon King Bichuan's voice was extremely sharp. Just listening to it was as if it was going to pierce through one's ears. It was unbearable. Even Tianyang could not help but frown. An ant from the God realm who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you really think that the Devil realm is the same as the weak God realm? You dare to attack 5th Brother with your meager strength? On the other side, Demon Monarch Luoyin said arrogantly, "You haven't even heard of us, the 5 demon monarchs of the central demon lands, yet you dare to attack Fifth Brother? You're courting death." In the next moment, the dark red flames on Demon Lord Luoyin's body exploded to the extreme, as if it could boil the endless demonic energy around it. His aura also rose to the peak. Seeing this, Tianyang frowned. Even though his cultivation had reached the peak of the late stage of the divine realm, Tianyang dared not say that he had a 100% chance of winning against 3 demon monarchs alone. Then, there was only one option left. Tianyang's lips curled up slightly. Boom! In a flash, Tianyang appeared in front of Demon Monarch Luoyin, whose aura was the weakest, and punched out. War of the Emperors! Surging chaotic divine power burst out, and behind Tianyang, the shadow of the firmament War Emperor appeared. The Emperor technique, which contained endless fighting spirit, was blasted out and directly bombarded Demon Monarch Luoyin's face. Bang! Demon Monarch Luoyin obviously did not expect Tianyang to attack so suddenly. He did not even have time to defend himself and was sent flying by the punch. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and even the dark red flames on his body were extinguished. His aura instantly fell to the bottom of the valley. Tianyang chased after him in a flash, aimed at Demon Monarch Luoyin's chest, and punched again. Boom! Blood and flesh splattered everywhere, and Demon Monarch Luoyin's chest was directly punched through. Even if he did not die, he would no longer have the ability to fight. Next, Tianyang retracted his hand and chuckled. "What? How dare you?" Seeing this, Demon Monarch Taotai and Demon Monarch Bichuan's expressions changed drastically, and they looked at Demon Monarch Luoyin in disbelief. Their faces were filled with disbelief. One person, facing 3 demon monarchs, dared to be the first to attack? "You're courting death." Demon Monarch Taotai was instantly enraged. In a flash, he appeared in front of Tianyang. Demon devours the heavens and earth. Streaks of demonic aura, accompanied by the devouring power, burst out and gathered in Demon Monarch Taotia's palm. He slammed it down on Tianyang's head. With Demon Monarch Taotia's tyrannical speed and his devouring power, almost all of his enemies could be defeated in an instant. However, Tianyang seemed to have expected this, and his right fist punched upwards. "You devour, I'll devour too." Suddenly, the devouring power of Heaven Cloud Sword burst out and collided with Demon Monarch Taotia's palm. Boom boom boom. Demon Monarch Taotia's devouring power was abnormally strong. Even Tianyang's extremely stable Dao foundation could not withstand the devouring power of Demon Monarch Taotai. Streaks of divine power were devoured by Demon Monarch Taotai. However, the devouring power of Heaven Cloud Sword was devouring Demon Monarch Taotia's demonic aura at an even faster speed. If Tianyang's divine power was being devoured at a trickle, then Demon Monarch Taotia's divine power was being devoured at a trickle. The devouring speed of Demon Monarch Taotia's demonic aura was like a raging sea. "What kind of technique is this?" Demon Monarch Taotia's expression changed when he realized that his devouring power was not enough to devour this human from the divine world. He quickly retreated. However, Tianyang's body flashed and he took a step forward. The Expanse secret skill was unleashed. When Demon Monarch Taotai took a step back, Tianyang took a step forward. The devouring power of Heaven Cloud Sword could devour from a distance. Even if the demonic aura being devoured by Tianyang was just a drop in the ocean compared to Demon Monarch Taotia's. However, Demon Monarch Taotai was still extremely fearful when he was suppressed in his strongest aspect. Descent of the Jade Spring. At this moment, Demon Monarch Bichuan suddenly attacked. The attack that he had been accumulating power for a long time blasted down on Tianyang's head. The dark green demonic aura was like a physical entity. It carried an unparalleled aura as it crashed down on Tianyang. This was the second attack of Demon Monarch Taotai and Demon Monarch Bichuan's joint attack. If Demon Monarch Taotai could not be killed instantly, then Demon Monarch Bichuan's attack that he had been accumulating power from the beginning would be enough to complete the final attack. In the demonic realm, there were only a handful of people below the ultimate god level who could withstand this double attack. The monstrous demonic aura was like a waterfall suspended in the air. In an instant, it bombarded Tianyang's body. With an unstoppable force, it crashed down on him. End of chapter.